So you want to create a performant e-commerce shop using Next.js 13, sanity.io as our headless CMS to store our products, Stripe as our payment processor, Tailwind CSS for styling, and also Shadcn UI for styled and accessible components. Well, you have come to the right video, since that's exactly what you'll build in today's video. In this project, you'll learn how to create a connection between Stripe and your project. Also, you'll learn how to query data from Sanity.io with their custom Grok query language. Also, we'll learn everything about Next.js 13, how to create routes, how to create dynamic routes, and also how to fix the caching issue in production. Also, at the end of the project, we'll deploy our application and we'll see multiple errors while deploying, which I will fix live with you. So with that out of the way, let's check out the demo behind my screen. And now I hope you enjoy this video, and now let's go. So right now on my screen you can see what we'll build today. So right here we have our navbar with a logo, our categories and a cart. If I click on the cart right now, you will see that our shopping cart is empty and it tells me you don't have any items. If I scroll down a bit, you see right here in our hero a title, a description and 2 images. These 2 images are dynamically fetched from Sanity.io. That means that they can be changed at your liking at any time. Right here at the bottom you also see again these 3 categories which I can click, and then I will get redirected to each category. If I scroll further down, you'll see our newest products, which consist of 4 products. I can click on a product, so if I click on this Nike Windrunner, you'll see I will get redirected to the product page. I can toggle each image as you see, and then the big image changes. Also on the top again on the navbar, I can click on each category and I will see the products which are referenced to each category. If I now add these shoes to the cart, you'll see that the shopping cart automatically opens and I will see the item inside of here. If I use another item, so let's use this one right here and add it to cart, I will now have 2 items. Also a nice thing which we have implemented in this project is if I reload this shopping cart right now, so the page has now been reloaded, and if I now again click on the cart, you will see that the items are still there. And that's because the items are being stored in local storage, and that means that if I reload the page or if the user reloads the page, the products keep persisted inside of our shopping cart. So we have a subtotal right here, and I can now click on checkout. When I click on checkout, I will get redirected to Stripe, and as you see, if I zoom in for you guys a bit, I can now pay. So let me do that real quick. So if I click on pay, you will see this will now take a second and I will get redirected to the success page which I have created. So that's what we'll build today. If you want to get the code, just go to my YouTube description and follow my GitHub link. Also at the end of this video, we'll deploy this application to Vercel so that you have a live application. And with all that out of the way, let's start with this video. So to get started, I will open my terminal and cd into my desktop directory, cd into my YouTube directory, and inside of here I will run npx create-next-app at latest, since I want to install the latest package of Next.js. The CLI will now ask me for a name, so let's name it Next.js Commerce YouTube. Then it will ask me if I want to use TypeScript. Sure, let's use that. Let's use ESLint. Of course, we will use Tailwind. We won't use the source directory. We will use the app router. We won't customize the import alias. And I think that's all. So now the CLI will install everything. And once that's done, I will come back. So Next.js is now successfully installed, and I can now go to Visual Studio Code and open my project. And as you see already, I opened it. And if you want to do the same, click right here on File and click on Open Folder. But now as you see, we have a blank application with just the default template. So let's clean up a bit. So right here in the tailwind.config, we have some extend. So we extend our theme. That's just default Next.js stuff. We don't need it. So let me delete this extend thing right here. Also, let's open our globals.css file. And as you see right here, we also have some stuff we don't need. So let's also delete that. So now our application is completely blank without anything. And I think that looks way better. Now, I think the first thing we will do is actually set up a Shadcn UI. So the component library, which we will use for this project. So as you see right now, I'm on the Shadcn website or the UI.shadcn website. And as I already said, this is a component library which is based on Radix UI, and Radix UI is a non-styled, accessible component library. And Shadcn is pretty much just, you could say, a better version of Radix UI components. So what we'll do right now is click right here on documentation, click on installation, scroll to Next.js, and then right here, we already created a project. So let's do the second step, which is to run the CLI. So let's copy the command right here. I will use npm, and then let's go back to our code. It's right here. Let me open my terminal. You can do that either with command J, or you can go right here on top and click on terminal and new terminal. So right here now, let me just paste the command, and this will now ask me a few questions, as you will see. So first of all, would you like to use TypeScript? Yeah, sure. Let's use that. We will use the default style. We will use the base color of slate. Also, our global CSS file is an app/global CSS. You can also see that if you open the Explorer right here, we have right here our globals.css inside of the app folder. So let's click enter. Now, would you like to use CSS variables? Sure, let's use that. Why not? Where is your tailwind.config.js located? As you see right here, we have a tailwind.config.ts, not a JS. So we'll have to change that. So let me just copy that, paste that, and change the JS to a TS. So now that looks correct. Do we want to configure the import alias? No, that looks good to me. I think the import alias also looks good, and we are using server components, and we want to write a component.json configuration. So now this is all initialized. As you see, inside of our globals.css, we now have our CSS variables, so that looks good to me. One thing I want to do right now is actually change that. So right now it's just the default color, which is this grayish color, as you see also right here. But if I go to the website and click on themes, as you see, I can change the CSS variables to a different color. So right here, let's click on customize. Let's click on violet. Let's leave the radius at 0.5, mode light. And then right here, let's click on copy code. This will right here give us now the CSS variables. So let me copy them, go back, and let me delete this layer base. So let's go back to the bottom right here. And let's paste what I've just copied. So now we change the color from this grayish, or this black color, to this nice violet color. So again, let me click that. As you see, it will look like that. So now that looks good. And what I think we will do now, since we already configured Tailwind CSS and Shadcn UI, I think what we'll do right now is install a few packages. And to do that, open your terminal. And now inside of my terminal, I will clear everything. Let me also maybe make it a bit more zoomed in for you guys. So inside of here, I want to now install a few packages. For that, I will go to my GitHub, and I already copied the command, so I'll paste it right here. But all you have to do is go to my GitHub, and then you'll find the command to install all of the packages. So right here, you will see we install a few packages, and the first one is use shopping cart. Use shopping cart just makes the whole process of the shopping cart much easier, and also to handle the state. Also, the nice thing is it works directly with Stripe, so the configuration is much easier and the entry barrier is also much easier. Then of course we install Stripe, since we want to use Stripe as our payment processor. Then I install next-sanity. Next-sanity is the package for Sanity, and Sanity is a headless CMS. And with Sanity, we'll store our products. Then we have Stripe.js. This is the client version of Stripe. And then we also have Sanity image URL. And all Sanity image URL does is provide the images from Sanity. So now that's done. So let's click on enter. This will now install for a bit. And once that's done, I will come back. Great. So the packages have now successfully installed. We have now two things we could do. Either we start with the UI, so we create a navbar and the index page, or we start with, I would say, Sanity. And I think we will start with Sanity and do the ugly work, and then do the fun work of creating the UI. And for that, we will have to go to the Sanity website. So I'm now on sanity.io, and as I already said, Sanity is a headless CMS, and we will use Sanity to create our products and store them with Sanity. And Sanity has many nice things like a good CDN. We can also modify our images, width, height, quality. So I think Sanity is a great platform, and it's also very cheap. So let's right here click on developers. and then let's click on documentation. Then let's click on getting started right here on the left corner, and on right here, create a project. Right here, we will now get an install command. So let's copy that right now. Let's open our terminal. Let me again zoom in and let me paste the command. So what do we do right here? We create a new Sanity project at latest, so the new one. We use the clean template, so no block template or e-commerce template. It's completely clean, and we have to create everything by our own. Then right here we create a project, give it a name of Sanity project, and use a data set called production. Now I want to change the name. I don't like the name Sanity project, so let's change it to, let's say, e-commerce YouTube best, something like that. And that's all, I think. So now let's click enter. So again, this will now take a bit. And as you also see right here, it tells me I already have an account, and that's also linked. If this does not happen and you get an error, that's because your terminal is not linked, or your code, I guess, or your project is not linked to Sanity. So follow just the instructions and then everything should be good. So right here it now asks me, would you like to add configuration files for Sanity project in this Next.js folder? No, I don't want to do that. So let's click N. Then the project output path will just be Sanity. And then I will click enter. I will use TypeScript, and now that looks good. Also, as my package manager, I will use npm, and now this will take a bit. So once that's done, I will come back. So good news, Sanity is finally installed. So let me close my terminal. Let me zoom out a bit. And if I now open the Explorer right here and close everything, you will now see right here we have created a new folder, or the CLI actually created a new folder called Sanity. And right here all of our Sanity content lives. So we have all these folders and the files, so you see everything works. If I now go back to the website right here, the next step is to create a schema. And also it tells us right here how the file layout looks like. And that's also the same what we have. We have schemas. We have an ESLint, gitignore, and everything like that. But the only folder that is interesting for us is the schemas folder, because inside of here we will create our own schemas. So let's go back right here, and if you scroll down a bit, you will see right here how to create a schema for your own. So that's basically the same what we'll do. We'll create a schema, we'll call it product, for example, we'll have to export default it and then give it some fields. So let's do the same that is shown right here. So let's go back right now. Inside of our schemas folder, inside of the Sanity folder, I will create a new file, and the file will be called product.ts. Now inside of here, we'll again have to do the same as here. So do an export default and the fields. So let's do that. Let me close my Explorer and let's start. So let's do an export default. Inside of here, I will now have to give it a name. So how is our schema called? The name will just be, let's say, product. Then we'll also have to give it a type, and the type will just be document. Then we'll also have a title, and the title will be product. Now you should know, the name is how we'll query our schema at the end. So I always started lowercase and also no spaces in between. But the title is how it will be shown in the Sanity Studio. So you can name the title whatever you want, so gibberish at the end of the day, since it's not important. Now, what do we need next? Now we have to create our fields, and the fields is an array with multiple objects. So let's create an object inside of here, and again, we'll have to give it a name, a type, and a title. So let's start off with what you want to start. What does a product have? It always has a name. So a name will just be the name, then we'll have a type, and the type will just be in string. What else you will have? A title. And as I already said, the title can be whatever you want. So let's just say name of product. Now the next field I want is the images. So let's create a name, and the name will just be images. What else do I want? Let's give it a type. And now for the type, you can do two things. Either you use a type of image or you use a type of array. Now for my website, I want to create multiple images for my product. So if I want to create multiple images, I will have to use the type array. But if I only want to use one image and only upload one image, then I can use the type image. And since again, I want to use multiple images, let's use a type array, and let's give it a title of product images. So one important thing right now is Sanity does not know what type of array we want to use. So this array right now could be of type string or type anything. So we have to explicitly tell Sanity what type of array we want to use. So right here we'll just say of array type image. And now Sanity knows we want to use an array of type image. And now that looks good. Now, if you think of a product, what does a product also have? It has a name, it has images, and it also has description. So let's give it a name, and the name will just be description. Then we'll have to give it a type. And now for the type, you could of course just say it's type string, but Sanity also has a nice type which is called text, and that's what we'll use. Also right here, let's give it a title, and the title will just be description of product, just like that. Then the next field I want to use is, I think, in slug. So I want to use the slug to at the end show it in the URL, and we'll query our product through the slug. So let's give it a name of slug. Let's give it a type, or which will also be slug, and let's give it a title of let's say product slug, just like that. So what's the next field I want to use? I think we'll also have to give it our product a price. So let's give it a name of price. Let's give it a title of price uppercased. Then what else? Let's give it a type, and the type will now be a number and not a string, since a price is always a number. So that looks good in my opinion. What else do I want? I think right now that's all. Later on we of course will have to add a few more things, but for now that looks good. So let's actually see if everything works. So to do that, open your terminal, let me clear everything. Let's cd into the Sanity folder, and let's run npm run dev. This will now start the local server of our Sanity project. So as you see, our local server has started at localhost 3333. So let me open that right now, right here. This will now ask me to log in into Sanity Studio, and you will have to choose the login provider which you have used to create your own Sanity project. For me this was GitHub, so I will sign in with GitHub. And what do you see? We see an error, or not an error but more a warning. So it tells us no document types, please define at least one document type in your schema. But now if you go back and think a bit, we have just created a schema, why does it not show, right? And the thing is that right here in our schemas we have an index.ts, and it just exports a constant called schema types with an empty array. And inside of the empty array we have to define our schemas. So inside of the array, let's define the product schema, and we have to import that from /product. So let me click that, and TypeScript has automatically imported everything for me. And if I now go back, you now see on the left our product schema. And if you click right here to create a new product, you'll see everything. Name of product, description of product, product slug, and price. Now there's one thing I don't like right now. For the product slug, we have to create our own. But I don't want that. I want Sanity to generate our product slug based on the name. So to do that, it's quite easy actually. Let's go to our product schema again, then to our slug right here, and then under the title, I will do an options field. And inside of the options, let's give it a source, and the source will be name. If I now go back, you will right here see, this will load a bit. Let's wait for a second. It's loading. If I now go to the product slug, you see a button, and that's generate. What that now does is, if I create a name of the product, so let's say shoes very cool in blue, let's say it like that. If I now go back and click on generate product slug, it will generate a product slug for me. So I don't have to do any manual work, everything is done for me, and that looks great in my opinion. So now we have created the product schema, but we are still not done, since what I want to do is also of course create a category schema, and then later on reference our product with the category. So let's go back to the schemas folder right here, and inside of the schemas folder, let's create a new file called category.ts. And the idea of this category schema is actually pretty much the same to the product schema. And what we have to do right here is actually pretty easy, since it's almost the same to our product.ts. We have to export default it. We have to give it a name, a type, a title, and fields. So let's do that right here inside of our category file. So to do that, let's create an export default. Let's open that. Let's give it a name. The name will just be category. Let me spell that correctly. Let's give it a type. The type will be, of course, document. What else do we need? We need a title, and the title will be called categories. And then we have to create our fields. The fields will be an array with an object inside of it. Now for the object, I only actually need one field. So let's give it a name, and the name will just be the name, since I want the name of the category. Let's give it a title. Let me spell that correctly. And this will just be name of category. So the next step is to give it a type, and the type will just be in string. So that looks great in my opinion. And if I now go right here to our index.js, let me add it. So let's add a category. Let's click import. If I now go back to our Sanity Studio right here on the left side, you will now see the category schema. Right here I can create new categories. So let's give it a name of men, for example. If I now click on publish, what you will see, we have a new category. But what I want to do actually is pretty much reference our category inside of our product schema right here. And to do that, again, that's not very hard. So let's do that. Let's go to our product.ts file right here. Let's just go to the bottom right here and let's create a new object inside of here. Now right here we have to give it a name, and the name will just be category. Let me spell that again correctly. Then let's give it a title. The title will just be product category. And then let's also give it a type. And the type will now not be a string or anything. It will be a reference. So let's say the type will be a reference. And of course, we again have to tell to what does our category right here reference. So let's do 2. The 2 is an array with one object. And the type is just category. If I now save that and go back, again, we'll have to load a bit. And in a second, you will see right here on the bottom, I now have a product category. And right here, I can now reference to my men category, since in my category schema right now, I only have one category. If I now create another category, so let's say woman, and publish that right now, and go back to product, go on my very cool shoes in blue, I can now again click on reference, and I now have the man category, and I have the woman's category. So we see it works perfectly, and everything looks good in my opinion. So now we have two schemas, and that looks good. We have a product schema and we have a category schema. But if you can remember to my demo, at the start I had in my index page 2 images. And what I want to do now is create another schema with which I can then target these 2 images and change them, for example, based on the season. So in the summer I have summer photos, and in the winter we have winter photos. So to do that, let's again go in our schemas folder and let's create a new file. Let's name it heroimages.ts. And the idea of this file is actually again the same to the other 2 files. So let's start with an export default. We give it a name. The name will be hero image, or yeah, just like that. Looks good. Let's give it a type, and the type will be document. Then also we'll have to give it a title. The title will be 2 hero images. Then we'll have to give it a fields array. So let's do that. An array with one object for now. The name right here will be image1. Then let's give it a type. The type will be image. Since I only want to create one image, I also can give it just the type image and not the type of array. Then the title for that, let's say first image. Just like that. That looks good. So with that out of the way, let's create one more field, and that will be name of image, let's say 2. Let's give it a type, and the type will just be image. And let's also give it an right here a title, and the title will be just second image. Let's save that. Let's go to our index.ts and let's also add this file. So hero images, just like that. If I now go back and this will load again a bit, you'll right here see 2 hero images, and I can create one, I guess, file in that sense. And we have now the 2 references right here, create our first image and create our second image. So that looks great in my opinion, and we are done with that. So actually we are completely done with Sanity. So our Sanity Studio is done. What I want to do now is actually connect our content to our front end, so to Next.js. And for that, let's go back to the Sanity website actually. So right here, we have now created a project, we have created a schema, we have created content, just basic content, but that's fine for now. What I want to do now is connect content. And for that, right here, we see we have connect your content to Next.js, and you can follow that if you want to, but we don't need to do that. What I want you to do is right now go inside of your app folder right here. Inside of your app folder, let's create a new folder called lib, And inside of the lib folder, let's create a file called sanity.ts. So inside of the sanity.ts file, we will now have to create a sanity client. And with the sanity client, we can then fetch content from our Sanity Studio. So to do that, let's export a constant called client. This will be equal to create client. And now this does not import sadly for me. So let's do an import, create client, and create client is imported from next-sanity, just like that. And now inside of here, let's do an object. And inside of here, we have to give it now a few fields. So you can click on Command spacebar, and then we will need a project ID, and this will be a string. We'll need a data set, and the data set will also be a string. And then we'll also have an API version. Let's give it a string. And let's do an use CDN. And use CDN is just a boolean with which we tell Sanity if we want to use the CDN or if we don't want to use it. And I want to use the CDN, so let's do true. So now we have to give it a project ID, a dataset, and an API version. So for the dataset, we already know that it's production, since when we installed Sanity, we told the CLI that we want to name our dataset production. So let's do production, just like that. For the API version, this will be 20, 22, 03, and 25, just like that. That looks good. And for the project ID, we'll now have to go to our Sanity website. So let's do that. And then once you're on the Sanity website, click right here on the top, click on Manage Projects. And once you're here, let me click on the first one, since that's a project which we have created. Then on top right here, you see the project ID. So all you have to do is actually copy this right here. So let's do that and paste it inside of here. Now that's actually already all. We have now created a Sanity client, and in theory, we can now fetch data from Sanity. But before we are done, one more thing I want to do is actually create an image builder. So if you didn't know, Sanity, when we fetch data, it does not give us the image URL. It only gives us pretty much an ID. And to create the image, we'll have to use the installed package Sanity image URL. So to do that, let's create a constant. Let's name it builder. This will be equal to image URL builder. And again, it does not import for me. So let's go on top and let's do an import image URL builder. And this will be from, let's say, at sanity/image URL. Inside of this image URL builder, we now have to pass our client. So right here, which we have created, our Sanity client. And now that looks good. What we now have to do is export a function. So let's do an export function. Let's name it URL4. Right here, we have to pass a source, and the source will just be an any. And let me open the function. Inside of here, I now have to return our builder.image, and let's pass our source. So now we are done. We have created a Sanity client, and we created an URL4 function with which we create our images, or in that sense, we create the image URL from Sanity. So now we are done with that actually. So now let me think, what do? We have now created Sanity. We created the Sanity client, the Sanity image, URL builder, we have created Sanity Studio, and we have created the schemas. So in total, we're done with Sanity. So the hard part, I would say. What I think we'll do now is actually start with the UI. And the first thing I want to do is start with the navbar. So right here, let's go to the Explorer. Let me close everything. And inside of the app folder, I will create a new folder called components. And inside of here, I will create a new file called navbar.ts. Or not ts, I'm sorry, but navbar.tsx. So inside of this file, we first of all have to export default our function. So let's do an export default function. Let's give it a name of navbar, and let me open the file right now. So inside of here, let's create a return statement. Let's give it a div, and let's say h1 hello from the navbar, just to see if everything works. If I now open my terminal again, you will right now see we are inside of the Sanity terminal. So let me right here click on new terminal with this plus icon. And then inside of here, I will just run npm run dev. This will now start the local server for our Sanity, for our Next.js project on localhost 3000. So everything has been successfully compiled, as you see. And right now you see the page right here. But that's not what we wanted to see. We don't see the navbar, but we see the default template by Next.js. That's not what I want to see. So what we'll do right now is open the Explorer, go to our right here app folder, go to our page.tsx, and let me delete everything inside of here. And then inside of here, I will just do a div, let's say h1, hello from the main page. If I now save that and go back, that's still not what we want to see. We now see the index page with hello from the main page, but we don't see the navbar. And that's because we just created a component for the navbar, but not a file. And if we want to show it, we have to import it somewhere in a file. And for that, I will actually use the layout.tsx. This is the root layout, and everything pretty much gets wrapped inside of this children. So again, inside of this layout.tsx, what I want to do now is render our navbar before our children. So to do that, let's create a bit of space, and then above the children right now, let me just import our navbar, just like that. If I now save that and go back, what you will now see is hello from the navbar and hello from the main page. So that looks great in my opinion, and I think we are now done with that. Or we're not done, but we have now imported navbar and successfully see that the component works. So now let's style our navbar and create it finally. So let's go to our navbar.tsx again. Let me delete this return statement since I don't want to use a div, but I want to create a header. So let me start off with styling our header. And to do that, let's give it a class name of margin bottom of 8, and let's give it a border of bottom, just like that. Inside of the header, I want to now use a div, and let's give it a class name. And the class name will be flex, items, which will be center. We'll have a justify, which will be between. We'll have an mx of auto, max width, which will be 2xl. We'll also have a padding x of 4, and small, which will be padding x of 6, and lg, which will be max width of 7xl, just like that. Inside of this div, I want to create a link now, and the link is imported from NextLink. So this is a component provided by Next. And why do we use that and not the standard A tag? So this one right here, that's because with this link tag right here, it's almost the same to the A tag, just with superpowers. So with this link component, we do client-side navigation. We also do prefetching, and it's just a way better experience for the user. So let's use this. And right here you see it complains to us and it tells us right here, property href is missing. So let's give it an href, and the href will just be the index page, so an empty slash. And inside of here, let's create an h1, let's give it a class name. And the class name will be text of 2xl, font which will be, let's say, bold. And then let's say right here, how do we want to name our shop? Next commerce, just like that. If I now save that and go back, you right here now see the name Next Commerce. But I don't like it, it's a bit too small actually. So let's change the 3XL or the 2XL to 4XL. And also let's wrap our commerce inside of a span. So let's do a span, just like that, and paste it inside of here. And let me also style the span. So let's give it a class name of text, which will be primary. Primary right now will be this violet color. And this primary color, if you can remember, is if you open our globals.css, that's right here our CSS variables, which we have created using Shadcyan UI. So now our title will be in the same color as our buttons, for example, which we'll use from the Shadcyan package. So now that looks alright, I think. So I think we can continue for now. What I want to do now is render our links. So right here in the middle, if you can remember, I want to show a few links. So let's go right here on top and create a constant called links. And this will be of type an array. And inside of here, we'll have 4 objects. So let's give it a name. And the name of the first link will be home. And the href will just be an empty slash, so the index page. The next object, let's give it a name, which will be men. Then the href will be slash men. And important, this right here is capitalized. So men is capitalized and the slash men is also capitalized. Then the next object will be name, which will be woman. Then the href of this will be just the same as men, with the difference that it will be slash woman. Again, capitalized W. Then the last object I want to do is a name, and the name will be teens, and the href will again be the same as woman, just with the difference that we'll have a slash teens. Again, the T right here is capitalized. So that looks good. What we want to do now is go under this link right here, and let me create a nav element. Now for the nav element, let me give it a class name of hidden. So if the mobile device, or if the device is a mobile device, I don't want to show it. Also, let's give it a gap of 12. Let's give it an LG of flex. So I only want to show the navbar if the device is bigger than LG, and I don't remember, LG right here is the min width 1024 pixels. So just like that. And let's also give it a 2XL, which will be margin left of 16. Just like that. That looks good. And now inside of the nav element right here, I want to map over my links and then show the link. So to do that, let's do our links.map. We'll get a link, and let's also get an IDX, and let's return that right now. Now, what I want to do right here is create a div element. We'll have to give it a key so that TypeScript stops complaining. So let's give a key of IDX. And inside of here, I want to now check if our current path is equivalent to our link. So if, for example, the current path name, so let me illustrate it right here. So if our current path name is slash, let's say men, and the link which we are on right now is also slash men, so just like that. If they both are the same, what I want to do is that the link has a special color. So in that sense, this color will be this violet color. If the link is not the same, so for example, our link will be woman, then I don't want to show this pinkish or this violet color. I want to have a default state of gray. And to achieve this, we first of all have to get the path name. So on top right here, we have to import a special package, or not a special package, but a special function provided by Next.js. And this will be a constant called path name, which will be equal to use path name. And use path name is imported from next/navigation. Now, one important thing, since use path name is a hook, we will have to add a use client state right here on top. Why is that? That's because our file, so the navbar file, will have to hydrate on the client. If I don't do that, we'll get an error and it will not work. So that's why we'll use an use client. And again, that means that the file still is server-side rendered, so we still have the SEO benefit, but it will be hydrated on the client, so we can still use this interactivity. So right here now, inside of this div element, I want to use and check. So if our path name right now is equal to our link.href, and right here I will use in ternary, so question mark, let's return one thing, and if this is not true, let's use the colon and return something different. So if this is now true, let me return a link. Again, we'll use the link component. Let me give it an href, and the href will just be the link.href. And let's also give it a class name. So right here, again, class name. The class name will just be text LG, font, which will be semi-bold. Let's also give it a text, which will be primary. Again, this violet color. So let's enter. And for the name, let me just use a link.name, just like that. That looks great. But now if this is not true, so if the link is not the same to the current path name, what I want to do is right here return again a link. So let's do that. Let's give it again the same href, and the href again is just link.href, but let's give it a few different class names. So let's give it a class name of text LG, font, which will be semi-bold. Let's give it a text of gray 600. Let's give it a transition, so right here, and the transition is without anything. Then let's give it a duration, and let's say a duration of 100 milliseconds, and let's do a hover, and the hover will be text primary. So we'll have a hover of this violet color. Then let's also give it a name, and the name will just be link.name, just like that. If I now save that and go back, so this will now reload everything, that looks actually quite alright, I think. Still not perfect, there's still a few things we have to do, but it already looks okay. So what I want to do now is, if you can remember, on the right side right here, we had the icon for the shopping bag. And that's what I want to create right now. So we'll have now the links then in the middle, and on the right, we'll have this shopping bag icon. So right now, to do that, what we'll have to do is go under this nav element, which we have created, and create a new div element. For that, let's give it a class name, which will be flex. Let's give it a divide of x. Let's give it a border of right. And let's give it a small of border, which will be left. Then inside of here, I want to create a button. Now, you could of course create a normal button, but I don't want to do this manual styling. What I want to do is use the button component from ShadCN UI. So to do that, let's go back to the UI.shadcn website. This will load for a second, and let's search right here in the documentation for the button. Right here we now have the button, and as you see, that's how the button looks. What you have to do now right here is click on installation. Let's use the CLI, and let me just copy this right here. Let me open my terminal, let me stop my dev server, let me clear everything, and let me just paste this command. What this now does is just adds the button component, and as you see, once that's done, if I now open my Explorer, click right here outside of the app folder inside of components and click on button, you will see what it actually is. It's just a Radix UI component and with some default styling. That's all it is actually. And now what we can do is if we go back to the navbar, I don't have to use this ugly button anymore. I can now use a capitalized button, and button is now imported from @component/UI/button. I can now close that, and if I now just say hey and save that and go back, let's open my page. This won't work because our dev server stopped. So let's again do an npm run dev. This will now take again a bit, so let's wait for a second. So as you see, everything has loaded again. And the nice thing which we now have is right here on the right, we now have this button. And the cool thing is that this button has now this violet color. So our text and our link all have the same color just as our button. So that looks great, but still that's not how I want it to look. I want it to have a grayish color. So we still have to add a few class names. So right here, let's do a class name. For the class name, let's do a flex which will be call. Then also let's do a gap of y, which will be 1.5. Let's do an h, which will be 12, width, which will be also 12, and small of height 20. Let's also do small of width 20. Let's also do a medium, which will be height 24, and a medium of width 24. Then also let's do a rounded of none, since I don't want any rounding. Now inside of here, I want to use an icon. And of course, in most cases, you will have to go to a website and search for icons. But the nice thing with ShadCN, if I open my package.json right now, you will see that with ShadCN, we have automatically installed Lucid React. And Lucid is a very nice icon library. So we don't have to do any manual work and search for icons, but we can use this nice library for our convenience. So right here, I want to use the shopping bag icon. So let me just search for shopping bag. And again, sadly, it does not import for me. So what I will do is right here, go on top and let's do an import. The import will be just an empty object from, let's say, right here, how is it called? Lucid React. And then inside of the destructuring right here, I can search for shopping bag, just like that. If I now save that and go back right here, we started. So what do we have right here now? We now on the right side have an icon or a button in that sense, but it still has this violet color. I don't want that. To change that, let's go to our button and let's give it a variant. Now we have multiple variants. If I now right here check, we have a default variant, a destructive variant, a ghost, link, outline, secondary. So if I, for example, would do destructive, what you will now see, we'll have a red color. But I don't want that. I only want a variant of outline. If I now save that, that looks way better. And if I hover on it, you see this distinct little gray color. So that looks good in my opinion. What I want to do now is also add a bit of text on that. So let's do a span. And then inside of the span, let's write card. Let me also style the span. So let's give it a class name. The class name will be hidden. Text, which will be XS. Font, which will be semi-bold. Text, which will be gray, and let's say 500, and let's do an SM of block. What I'll do right here is, if we are on a mobile device, I don't show this text, but if we reach a minimum size of 640 pixels, I show the text. So if I now save that and go back, you will now see right here we have a card icon with this little card text. So that looks good in my opinion actually, and I think we're now done with the navbar almost. So let me check how it looks on mobile right now. So let's do that. Let me zoom out a bit. Can I zoom in here a bit? I think, yeah, 125%. So yeah, that looks all right in my opinion. But there's still a few things. First of all, the logo is way too big, I think. It's huge. So let's go right here on top, and I gave it a text for XL. So let's change it to, let's say, medium text for XL. And normal will just be text of 2XL. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks way better in my opinion. So now I would actually say our navbar is done. So again, let's go back. That looks all great. The title is big. If I zoom out for my normal screen, it looks great. If I zoom in a bit for you guys, in 150%, everything looks good. The link is shown correctly. So right now we are on the home page. That's why also our home page right here has this violet color. But if I would go to /man, our man page would now have this violet color. So since our navbar is now done, I think what we'll have to do is now create the index page. So let's start with that. So to do that, open your Explorer, and then inside of our app folder, inside of the components folder, let's create a new file called hero.tsx. Now inside of this hero.tsx, let's do an export default function. Let's name it hero, and let me just open this function now. Inside of here, let me return a div, and let's say h1 of hello from the hero. If I now save that and go back, again, you don't see anything. And that's because we have to first of all import this hero somewhere inside of our page. And for that, I will actually go right now to our page.tsx. So our page.tsx is right now our index page. And inside of here, I want to import our hero. So let me delete this h1 tag and let me import our hero component. If I now save that and go back, you will see hello from the hero. But first of all, let me actually also add right here inside of the div a bit of styling. So let's give it a class name of bg, which will be white, padding bottom, which will be 6, small, which will be padding bottom of 8, and let's do an lg of padding bottom 12. This is just some default styles so that we have some padding at the bottom later on. But for now, that looks actually quite okay. So I think we can now start with styling our hero page. So to do that, let me delete this div since I won't need that. And let's create a section element right here. And then let's give it a class name, and a class name which will be mx of auto. We will have a max width which will be 2xl. So let me spell that correctly. We will have an padding x which will be 4, small which will be padding x of 6, lg which will be max width of 7xl, and let's have an lg of padding x 8. If I now go back, you will actually see nothing, and that's because we have no content actually. We only have a section element. So let's create a few more elements, and then you will see what we have created. So inside of the section, let's create a div element. Let's give it a class name of margin bottom, which will be 8, flex which will be wrap. Let's also have a justify, which will be between. Let's also do a medium, which will be margin bottom of 16, just like that. Now inside of this div, I will create one more div, and I promise this is the last for now. So let's do a div. Let's give it a class name. Let me spell that correctly. This will be a margin bottom of 6, flex w, which will be full, flex, which will be call, justify, which will be center. Then I will also have a small, which will be medium, margin bottom of 12, lg, which will be margin bottom of 0, and lg width 1/3, so 1/3. Then we'll have an lg, which will be padding bottom of 24, and the last thing is lg of padding top of 48. That's all. So now, as I said, I will keep my promise, and now we won't create a div element, but an h1 element. I know, very special. So let's create an h1 element. Let's give it a class name. Or actually, before I give it a class name, let's just create a content. So let's say top fashion for a top price, exclamation mark. So if I now save that, you should see something on the screen. So let's go back, and yeah, we see top fashion for a top price. But it does not look good. It's not styled, it's way too small, so let's change that. So for the h1, let's create a class name. Let's give it a margin bottom of 4. Let's give it a text which will be 4xl. Let's give it a font which will be bold, text which will be black, Then we'll also have a small of text 5XL, medium of margin bottom 8. Let's do a medium of text, which will be 6XL. And let's do nothing else, I think. Let's save that. And yeah, we see it right here. If I zoom out a bit, I know it's a bit too big. It looks alright. Top fashion for a top price. So yeah, I think that looks alright. And what I want to do now is create a small description under this H1. So let's create a P tag. Let's create some content. Let's say just we sell only the most exclusive and high quality products for you. We are the best, so come and shop with us. Something like that. And if I now go back, you will see right here the content. We sell only the most exclusive and high quality products for you. That looks alright, but still I want to style it a bit, so let's do that. Let's give it a class name, so right here. Let's give it a max width of medium. Let's give it a leading, which will be relaxed. Now, what is this leading right here? So if you hover over it, it's the line height. So what I do right here is change the height between each line right here. So if I don't have this leading relaxed, it's way closer to each other. But if it's leading relaxed, it's a bit more relaxed, a bit more spaced out. So I think that's better. And now we can continue. So let's do a text gray of, let's say, 500 and an XL of text LG. If I now save that and go back, yeah, that looks great in my opinion. So now we are done with this text. And what we want to do now is on the right side, create the two images, if you can remember from the demo. So to do that, go under the P tag and under the div tag, and let's create a new div tag. So let's give it a class name. The margin bottom will be 12. We will have a flex. W will be full. Medium will be margin bottom of 16. We'll have an LG of width, let's say 2/3, so 2/3. And that's all. Inside of this div, I will create another div, and now let's give it a bit of styles. So let's give it a class name of relative. Let's give it a left, which will be 12. Let's give it a top, which will also be 12. Z, which will be 10. Then we'll have a minus margin left of, let's say, 12. Overflow, which will be hidden. We'll also have a rounded, and rounded will be LG. BG, which will be gray 100. And let's say a shadow of LG and medium left of 16. And let's also do a medium of top, which will be 16, and LG, which will be margin left of 0, just like that. And now again, I will promise you that's for now the last div, because inside of this div, I now want to create an image. So you could use the normal image tag, which is provided by HTML, and that's totally fine. But I want to use the image component provided by Next.js. And why do I want to use that? That's because actually the next image component is like the normal image tag, but with superpowers, because it optimizes images for you automatically. So right now, if you check right here on top, I've imported the image from next/image. So now for the image component, as you know, I don't want to use any images, but I want to use the images which I store in Sanity. So if I now go back to Sanity, right here you see the two hero images, and they are empty. We haven't uploaded any images for now. And if you want to, you can go to my GitHub and just download my repository and use the same images, or you can upload your own ones. But for now, let me first of all upload my images. So as you see right here, I have now uploaded two images, and all I have to do now is click on publish. This will now publish to Sanity Studio, and now I can actually fetch them from my front end. So now, if you didn't know, Sanity uses its own query language, which is called Grok. So what you can do right now is click right here on Vision, and inside of here you can test your queries. And as already said, Sanity uses its own language called Grok, and Grok could be a bit hard maybe for if you're seeing it for the first time. It's a bit complicated maybe. But actually, trust me, once you start using it, it's very powerful and very easy to use. So to start with our query, all you have to do always is start with this asterisk symbol. And all it tells right here is fetch everything. So if I would now click fetch, it will actually fetch everything which we have. I don't want that. I want to actually filter to only get our hero image. To do that, let's use the array symbol right here. And I want to get a type which is equal to our hero image. If I now click fetch, what you will see is we get one item, so one array item, and then in total one object. So we get one array with one object. But since I already know that our hero image only has one object, what I can do right now is at the end of this array, use an array symbol with 0, and that tells Sanity I only want to get the first item inside of the array. And if I now click fetch, you see we only get one object and not this array anymore. And again, to summarize, what have we done? We use the asterisk symbol to query everything, but we don't want everything, we want to filter it. So we use the filter, which is type, and we want to have the type which is equal to our hero image. Then we use this array 0, since we only want to get the first item inside of the array. So now I hope you understand what we done right here. So now we want to fetch our data. And since we use Next.js 13 with the app router, we use server components. So we can actually fetch our data from the component. And to do that, go right here on the top and let's do an async, let me spell that correctly, async function, let's say get data, and let's just open that. Inside of here, let's create a constant, let's name it query, and this will be equal to our query, which we have just created. Then let's fetch that, so let's do a constant, let's call it data, await, and then we have to import client from our lib folder, dot fetch, and let me pass our query, just like that. Then all I have to do is return our data, and now we fetch our data. But still, I also want to get the data in my front end. Right now, I only fetch it, but I don't receive it in the front end. And to do that, go right here inside of your export default function, and let's do a const data, and const data will be equal to await get data, just like that. Now you see we get one error, and right here TypeScript tells me the error, and it tells me await expressions are only allowed within async functions and at the top level of modules. And right here tells me already fix, did you mean to mark this function as async? And yes, correct, I want to make this function async, so let me just click on quick fix, and all it does right now is right here do an export default async function. So we create an async or a server component in that sense. So now that works, we fetch our data and we get it in the front end. So all I have to do now is inside of this image component, we have to pass our source, and the source will be URL4, and URL4 is imported from our Sanity folder again. We have to pass our data.image1, and let's do a .url, since I want to get the URL from this image. What else do I want to do? We'll have to give it an alt tag, let's say just create photo. I don't want to create any alt tags right now. Then let's create a class name. For the class name, let's say h full, w full, let's say object of cover, and let's do an object which let's say will be center, not cover, but center. So just like that. If I now save that and go back, so let's go to localhost 3000 right here and reload the page, it tells me site can't be reached, and I think that's because my dev server is not running, so let me restart my dev server. So what do you see right now? We get an error, and what does it tell me? Image with source is missing required width property. So if you didn't know, the image component always needs to get the image width and the height. So let's give it a width, and let's say the width will be 500, and let's give it a height, which will also be 500. If I now save that, go back, you will see we again get an error, and it tells me invalid source prop on next image hostname sanity.io is not configured under images in your next.config.js. So let me first of all copy this URL right now. Let's go to our next.config.js. Inside of here, let's use our images, and right here, let's create an object. Inside of here, we get the domains, and domains is an array with the each domain URL. So all we do right here is just tell Next.js, right here I want to use this cdn.sanity.io as my source prop, and I want to get images from this URL. So if you use the Next.js component, or the image component in that sense, you always have to tell Sanity, not Sanity, I'm sorry, but Next.js, where you will get your images from, which URL. So you can't just use any random URL, but you have to tell Next.js which URL you will use at the end of the day. So if I now go back and restart everything or reload everything, So if you didn't know, actually, if I open my terminal, Next.js automatically refreshes or reopens my dev server since it has seen that I have done a change to my next.config. So if I go back, you now see an image. Great, we see an image. That looks good. So let's create the second image. So let's go to my hero page again. And what I want to do now is go under the image tag and under the div tag and create another div element. So let me give it a class name. The class name will be overflow of hidden. Then we'll have a rounded, which will be large. Then we'll have a BG, which will be gray of 100. And let's say in shadow of large. Inside of here, I want to again use the image component. And then inside of here, let's use a source. The source will be almost the same. So URL for, let me pass the data.image2, not 1. And let's say in .url, just like that. Then what else do I want to do? I want to add an alt tag. Let's again just say grade photo. Then let's use a class name. Age will be full, width will be full, object which will be cover, and let's say an object which will be center, just like that. The last step I will have to do is again add in width and height. So let's do that right now. Let's do in width, which will be again 500, and let's do in height, which will also be 500. If I now save that and go back, we now have two images and that looks great. Also, you could also add a property called priority right here, and all it tells Next.js is to load the image within priority. So if I now do that right here and save that, the images will be loaded within priority, and if I wouldn't add it, the images would be not loaded with a priority. You don't have to understand it, you don't have to use it. We'll just use it right now because it tells Next.js to load the images as fast as possible. And if we don't use it, it will just not load them as fast as possible. I hope you understand that, but it's definitely not required if you don't want to add that. So what do I want to do now? What I want to do now is on the bottom, add a few links to the man, to the woman, and to the teens categories. And that's again not very hard. So we go under our image component, under the div tag, under the next div tag, and under the next div tag. So just above the section tag, I want to create another div element. Let me scroll down a bit, and let's give it a class name. Let's give it a flex which will be call, items which will be center. Then we'll have a justify which will be between, gap which will be 8, and medium which will be flex of row. Inside of here, I want to create another div element, and let's give it a class name. Let's say a flex, age which will be 12, width which will be 64. Then I want to have a divide which will be just x, overflow which will be hidden, and let's do a rounded of let's say large. Also let's give it a border. So that looks good. Inside of this div element, I want to now again use the link component from next/link. Inside of here, I want to use an href. So let's give it an href of /man. And man again is capitalized. Don't forget it. Please add it or you'll get some errors. And you don't want to get errors. Trust me. Also now let's give it a class name. And the class name will be flex. Width which will be 1/3. Then let's give it an items of center. Let's give it a justify of center. Let's give it a text which will be gray of 500. Let's do a transition, and the transition will have a duration of let's say 100, just like that. Also let's do a hover, and the hover will be bg gray 100, and the active state which will be bg gray 200. Now inside of this link, let me add a name, and the name will just be man. If I now save that and go back, you will see right here on the bottom now, we have this man button or this man link in that sense. And what I want to do now is just copy this link actually 2 more times, or paste it 2 more times, I'm sorry. Let's do that. And let's change the link href right here to woman. Again, don't forget it, capitalized. Let's say right here woman, and right here teens, again capitalized, and teens. Just like that. If I now save that and go back, you will now see 3 buttons actually. So let me zoom out a bit more. You will see 3 buttons, man, woman, teens. So that looks good. If I zoom in a bit for you guys, I know it does not look so good, but again, if you would be a normal viewer of the website with just 100% zoom, it would look way better. So now I think we're done. Our index page has everything. We have a nav bar, we have a card right here, we have the links, we have 2 images, we have a title, a description, and 3 little links to each category. So yeah, that looks good. What I want to do now is actually, under this index page, I want to have like a little, I guess, product page, or not a product page, but I want to have pretty much a list where we have 4 of the newest products shown to the user. So the user will see 4 of the new products, and then if he wants to see more, he can click on each category, or what then on the right side on see more. So all I want to do is, again, like 4 little squares, and then inside of there we'll have just the 4 newest products. So let's do that right now. Let's go inside of our app folder, then inside of the components folder, and let's create a newest, let me spell that, newest.tsx. Then again, that's pretty much the same as with all other components. We will have to create an export default function, which we'll name newest. Then let me just open that, just like that. And now inside of here, I want to get the newest products and then render them. But before I can actually do anything of that, we of course have to create products inside of our Sanity Studio. Because if you now go to Sanity right here, let me open that and click on our desk and click on product, you will see we don't have any products. And I will now create a few products. Again, if you want to use the same products, please just go to my GitHub and just copy them and paste them inside of here. This is all you have to do, and then you'll be done. But for now, let me just add them. So I have now created 4 products in total. And one important thing also, right here in the categories, I have 3 categories: men, women, and teens. Please be sure that you have capitalized all 3 words, so teens, women, and men are all capitalized, because if they're not capitalized, you'll get an error. So be sure of that. Now for the product, as you see, I have 4 products in total. So I have the name, I have 3 images, I have a description, the product slug, which I've generated through the name, and the price and the category. And again, if you just copy everything from my GitHub, you'll have the same 4 products with everything added. So now that looks good in my opinion, and I think we can actually now start also fetching this data. So everything has been also be sure everything has been published, because if not, you won't be able to fetch all 4 products. But now everything is published, everything looks good, so we can actually also fetch this data. So what do we do now? Right here inside of this newest component, am I in the newest component? Yes, that looks good. I want to again create an async function to get the data. So on top, let's do an async function get data. Let me open that function. Let's create a constant. Let's name it query. And let me use right here upticks. So not the normal strings, but upticks. And inside of here, we'll again have to use grok, the query language. So let's again go to right here to the vision tab. And let's again test out our query skills. So how do we start? We always start with the asterisk with which we query everything. But we don't want everything, but we want only the products, or we only want to get the data from the type of product. So let's use the array symbol. Let's use an type, which will be equal to right here product. Let's do that with strings. And if I now click right here on fetch, you will see we get 4 items in total with a lot of stuff. But now if we create more products, so 5 products, 6 products, 10 products, we will fetch all of the products. So in that sense, maybe 10 products. But for our category page, or not our category page, but for our newest component, I always only want to get in total 4 products, not less, not more, only 4 products. And to achieve this, we will use right here after our array, a new array, and do an 0.4. And all I tell Sanity with this is I only want to get in total 4 products or 4 items and not more. 4 is the max, and that's all. And now if we click fetch again, we still get 4 items, and that looks all good. But we get a lot of stuff, and I don't need most of it. So for example, I don't need the description for our newest component. I also don't need right here inside of our, where is it, the slug. I don't need the type. All I need is the current, so the slug, Nike Windrunner. That's all I need. So let's do a bit of filtering. So for that, let's open this right here, and let's now filter for what I want. I want to get the underscore ID, then I want to get the price, I want to get the name. If I now click fetch, so let's click that. This will take for a second. Let's see. And as you see right here, I now get the ID, the price, and the name. But that's not all. I still need a bit more. So I want to get the slug. For that, I want to create a new name, which will be slug, and this will be equal to slug dot current. If I now save that or fetch in that sense, I now get the slug right here. What else do I want? I want to get the category name. For that, let's create a new name called category name, and this will be equal to category with an arrow to name. If I now fetch that, I now get the category name, which is men, or right here we will get, where is it, category name teens, or right here again men, and right here then again woman. So that looks good. Another thing I want is I want to get the image URL of the first product. And if I would now just say images and click fetch, we will get images with 3 items, but we don't get the string, and we get 3 images, but I only want 1. So to change that, what we want to do is again create a new name. Let's say image URL. This will be then equal to right here. Let me change that. Right here equal to images with the first item in the array dot asset arrow URL. If I now fetch that, I will right here get an image URL which is null, and that's because I've misspelled asset. It should be asset with an T and not with an S. If I now click on fetch, I now get the image URL of the first product. So I can copy this URL and open it in a new tab, and you'll see we now get the product. So this totally works, that's great, and now we're actually done. I can copy this query right here, go back to my code and just paste it inside of here. I now query my page and get the data. So now one thing I want to do is actually also order my query. So right now we only fetch the 4 products, that's fine, but I also want to get the 4 most recent items, so which I've created at the most recent time. And for that you can go to the Sanity.io docs and search for query cheat sheet, and then you will see how you order results. For that you will have to use this vertical line and then just say order based on what you want to do. So created at for us, and then ascending or descending. So let me copy this right here. I will copy that, go back, and then behind this 0 to 4, I will just paste that. So we have this vertical line, we order based on the created at date, and then I don't want to have it ascending but descending. We can now check if everything works. So let me copy this query, go to our vision tab, and then inside of here, let me just paste it inside of here. If I now fetch, you see we get 4 items, and now it's also based on the created at date, so we only get the 4 most recent items. So that looks great. We have now successfully written a good query. We now also have to fetch that data. So let's do in const data, which will be equal to await client is imported from our lib folder, dot fetch, and let's pass our query inside of here. Then we also have to return that, so let's do return data. Inside of our front end, what I have to do is now is const data, which will be equal to await get data. It will now tell me right here that I have to mark my function as async, and this is correct. So let me click on quick fix and add an async modifier. So that looks great in my opinion. But now one thing you will see right now is if I hover over data, our data is of type any. And I don't want that. I want to get types since I use TypeScript. And for that, we will actually create an interface file. So inside of your app folder, let's create a file called interface.ts. And now inside of this interface.ts, let's create an export interface. Let's name it simplified product, just like that. And let's open that. Now inside of here, we'll get a few things. First of all, underscore ID, which will be of type string. We'll get an image URL, which will also be of type string. We will get a price, and the price will be of type number. Then we'll get a description, or actually we won't get a description, but we'll get a slug. This will be of type string. And we will get a category name, and the category name will be of type string. Just like that. You can also check if everything is correct. So we get an underscore ID. Yes, we get right here in price. Let me check. Yes, we get a name. Let me check. So we don't get a name right here. So let's add that. We'll get a name, which will be of type string. What else do we have? We have a slug. Do we have it right here? Yes. we get a category name. Let me check if I spelled it correctly. Yes. And an image URL. Let me also check if I spelled it correctly. Yes. So that looks great in my opinion. So let's go back to our newest.tsx component right here. And now right here, I can give data a type of simplified product, which is an array. So I have to add this array symbol. And if I now hover over data, it tells me data is of the type simplified product as an array. That is great because we now have types for our data and we can now actually use it. So let's go right here and let's create a return statement. Let's give it a div. Let's give it a class name. The class name will be bgWhite. We'll have another div. Inside of here, we'll do a class name of mx of auto, max width, which will be 2xl, padding x, which will be 4, padding y, which will be 16. Then we'll also have an sm, which will be px of 6, sm, which will be py of 24, lg, which will be max width of 7xl, and let's do an lg of px8, just like that. Then inside of this div, let me create another div, and let's give it a class name. This will be flex, justify, which will be between, and let's say an items of center. And then inside of here, we can now create an h2 tag, and let's just say our newest products. If I now save that and go back to localhost 3000 and reload the page, I think my dev server is not running. So let me restart my dev server right now, and then we'll see what we have created. So what do we see? We see an hero, but we don't see the newest page. And that's because we haven't added the component. So let's go to page.tsx, so the index page, and let's add our newest component. So let me import that, save that. And if I now scroll down, we have a title with our newest products, but without any products, of course. So let's first of all style our h2 actually. So let's give it a class name. Let's give it a class name of text 2xl, font, which will be bold. Let's give it a tracking, which will be tight. And the tracking tight only tells the h2 tag that the letter spacing should be more tight. Then also let's give it a text, which will be gray of 900, just like that. If I now save that, you see right here our newest products, and this looks already way better. So now what do I want to do? I think also I want to create a link. So right here on the right side, I want to have a link which tells the user to see more, or in that sense, see all. So to do that, go under your h2 and let's create or use the link component, which we import from next/link. We'll have to give it an href. So let's give it an href of, let's say, /all. Then inside of here, let's do an see all. If I now save that and go back, we see right here this button or this text see all. But this still does not look great. So let me style that. So let's give it a class name. Let's say text, which will be primary. Let's give it a flex. Let's give it an items of center. And let's say gap x of 1. Then inside of this see all, I want to use a span. And then inside of the span, I want to use an icon. So let's do a right arrow. Let's see, do they have that? Or an arrow right? Yeah, just like that. And let's import that from Lucid. If I now save that and go back, we now have an see all text with an icon to see all. If I would click that, this would now redirect us to the page /all. But I don't want to do that. So that looks, in my opinion, quite good right now. So what do we do now? I think we will now actually render our products down below. So let's do that. So go under your link component and under the div, and then let's create a new div element. Let's give it a class name, which will be margin top of 6, grid, which will be calls of 1. Let's give it a gap, which will be x of 6, gap, which will be y of 10, and let's say sm of grid, which will be calls 2. Let's do also an lg of grid calls 4. Let's also then do an xl of gap, let's say x of 8, just like that. That looks good in my opinion. We can now map over our products and then render them. So let's do a data.map, and then right here we get a product, and let me return that. So what do I want to start off with? Let's just start with a div. Let's give it a div element. So we'll have to give it a key since we don't want to get any TypeScript errors. So the key will be product._id. Then I also want to give it a class name, and the class name will be group, and let's say also relative, just like that. Inside of this div, I want to create another div, and let's give it a class name. The class name will be aspect, which will be square. We'll have a W of full, overflow, which will be hidden. We'll also have a rounded, this will be medium. Let's also give it a BG of gray 200. Then let's also give it a group of hover, and this will be an opacity of, let's say 75, I think that's fine, and an LG of height 80. Now inside of this div, I want to create or use the image component. So let's import that from next/image. And again, we have to pass first of all a source, and the source will be the product.image URL. Then I want to give it an alt, and the alt will be just product image. Then I want to give it a class name. The class name will be wfull, hfull, object, which will be cover. What else do I want? Let's give it an object, which will be center. And then let's give it an LG, which will be h of full, and LG, which will be right here width of full, just like that. Again, I also have to add in width and in height to not get any errors. So let's add in width. The width will be 300, and the height, which will be also 300. If I would now save that, and if we go back and zoom down a bit, my internet is a bit slow, sadly, but now you see we have 4 images in total, or 4 products in that sense, and that looks actually quite good. Now, if I also hover on it, you see that the opacity changes, so it looks quite good in my opinion. Now, I of course also want to add a text, and so in that sense the name, the price, and the category. So let's go under the image component and under the div, and let's create another div. Let's give it a class name, and the class name will be margin top of 4, flex, and justify, let me spell that correctly, justify of between. Now inside of this div element, I want to just create an empty div element and then start with an h3 tag. This h3 tag will now get styling, so let's give it a class name, and the class name will be text of small, and let's say justify of between, just like that. Then inside of this h3 tag, I want to use the link component, and then inside of here, I want to show the product.name. So product.name, just like that. For the link, let me also give it an href if we're already here. Let's use upticks, and then let's use /product, let's use this $sign with this square icons, product.slug. So if I now save that and go back, you will now see the name of the products, and that looks actually quite good. If I hover over them, you see also on the bottom left corner that we get a link for localhost 3000 /product/ the slug of the product. So that looks actually quite good, but I misspelled something. This shouldn't be justify between, but this should be text gray 700. So let me do that. If I now save that and go back again, we now have a more grayish color, and I think that looks way better in my opinion. So now we have a name. What else do we need? We need a category name. So under the h3 tag, let me create a p tag, and let's right here use the product.category name. If I save that and go back, yeah, we see the category name. That looks good. So let me also style that. Let's give it a class name. We will have a margin top of 1, text, which will be small. Let's also use a text, which will be gray 500. If I now save that, yeah, that's smaller, a bit more grayish. That looks good. What else do we need? We need the product.price. So under the p tag and under the div tag, I want to create another p tag, and let's render the product.price. If I now save that and go back, you now see right here 85. So before the product.price, let me also add a $sign so that everyone knows what it is. $85, $40, $200. Yeah, that looks good. But let me also style it. So let's give it a class name. Let's do a text, which will be small. Let's use a font, which will be medium. Let's also do a text, which will be gray 900, just like that. If I now go back, that looks actually really nice in my opinion. So we now have a great index page. We have these buttons right here for the categories. And then we have our newest products, which are sorted or ordered in that sense from the created at date. We have the 4 products, we have great images, we have very nice right here the title, the price, and the category. So I think that looks actually quite good. So we're now done with the index page. Everything has been added, and now we can actually create the page for the individual product. So if I click on the product, I want to get redirected to the product, because if I click right now on it, you will see that we get redirected and we will get in 4.4, this page could not be found, and that's not what I want. So let's change that right now. So to do that, what we'll have to do is go right here inside of our app folder, and then inside of here we'll have to create a new folder called product. And since we want to pretty much query our product through the slug which we have right here, so if I hover over it, we have the slug Nike Sportswear Phoenix Fleece. And now each product has a different slug. That's why we'll have to create a dynamic route. And to do that, Next.js uses a convention with these square brackets, which you also use in arrays, for example. And then you'll have to give it a name. And with this right here, you tell Next.js that you want to have a dynamic route with the ID of slug. And now inside of the slug folder, let's create a new file called page.tsx. And now inside of here, let's just say for now export default, let's spell that correctly, default function, and let's call it product page. And now let me open that function just like that. Inside of here, I can now return something. So let's return an h1 and let's say hello from the product page, just like that. If I now save that and go back, and now let's click right here on the Nike Windrunner, you will see right here we get redirected to the product / our slug, and we have right here an hello from the product page. So we see it definitely works, which is great. So now I think we can actually continue. So what will we do for now? I think the first thing again, what we'll do is actually query some data. And for that, let's go back to Sanity. And let's go back to the Vision tab. Now let's delete this old query and let's create actually a new query. So again, how do we start? We start with the asterisk symbol and then we use the array brackets. Inside of here, what do we want to query? Well, we want to query type product. So let's do an underscore type, which will be equal to product in strings. If I now again click fetch, we now get 4 items. But this is not what we want. If you can remember, if we go back, we want to get one singular product which is equal to the slug. So we want to get a product which is equal to the slug. And this is actually quite easy to achieve with Sanity. All you have to do is use the multiple AND. And with that, you say, I want to have the type product, and I want that the slug.current is equal to, let's say, what do we have for a slug right here? Nike Windrunner. So let me copy that, paste that inside of here. And now if I click fetch, you see I only get one item. But what do we do right here? So we query for type product, and very important, and we want that the slug is equal to the slug which we pass right here. And with that, we get one item back. Now you see right here, we again get one array with one object. We don't need this array. So since we already know we only want to get one item back, we can do at the end again an empty array with a 0. If I now again click on fetch, we only get one object back and not the array anymore. So that looks good. And what I want to do now is again filter a bit what we get back. Since I don't need everything right here, I only need a few things. So again, let's open these brackets right here as you see them. And then let's query for an underscore ID. Let's get the images back. Let's get the price. Let's also get the name. Let's get the description. What else do we want? Let's get the slug. And for that, we give it a name of slug. And for that, we want the slug.current. What else do we need? Let's take also the category name. So let's give it a category name. And this is equal to category arrow name. And this looks good, I think. So if I now click fetch, let's see if everything works. We get a name, description, slug, category name, underscore ID. We get images and we get a price. So yeah, that works perfectly. What I can do now is copy this query and let's go back to our code. So at the top, what we'll do is again write an async function. Let's call it get data and let's open that function right here. Now let's do a const query. I will use again upticks, not normal strings, but upticks. And now let me paste what I've just copied. And now what I want to change is, right here I have now a static, I guess, value, which is called Nike Windrunner. But I want to make it dynamic and get the value through the params. So right here, through the parameter, let me first of all get a slug, and the slug will be of type string. And then right here for the Nike Windrunner, let me delete Nike Windrunner, and let's use a $sign and these brackets right here, and let's pass the slug. So that looks good. What I can do now is do a const data, let's say await client. We import a client from our lib folder, dot fetch, and now let's pass our query, just like that. And now the last step is to return our data. So now we fetch our data, but we also have to get it in the front end, and that's also pretty easy to do. All you have to do is right here, const data, and this will be equal to await get data. Now you will see we won't only get one error, but we also now get two errors. So first of all, the await error tells us that the export default function has to be has to have the async modifier. So let's add it right here. So export default async function. And the next error is it tells us what here get data expected one argument but got 0 arguments. So let's change that. And for that right here, we can destructure the params. So let me do that. And now right here also we have to give it in type. So params will be of type slug, which will be a string, just like that. And what I can do now right here in the get data, I can pass the params dot slug. So that's a bit of TypeScript magic. I just tell right here the params that params is of type slug, which is string, just like that. So now I think that's all. But one thing I already see that I don't like is if I hover over data right here, you will see that data is of type any, and we don't want that. Since we use TypeScript, we of course want to get types. And to do that, we'll actually have to again go to the interface, but now also create a new interface. So let's open the interfaces.ts, and inside of here, let's export a interface. Let's call it full product, and let me open that. Now inside of here, again, we get an underscore ID, which is string. Or actually, let's just copy everything right here, and let me paste it inside of here. Then it's a bit easier. So we now don't get an image URL, so I can delete that. And right here we see now, we get an underscore ID, this is correct. We don't get an image URL, so let's change the image URL to images. And this is not of type string, but let's make it type any. Then we get a price, this is correct. We get a name, this is correct. We get a slug, that's correct. We get a category name, that's correct. But one thing that we don't get is the description right now. So let's also add that right here. Description of type string, just like that. If we now go back to the page.tsx right here, we can now give data a type, and data will have a type of full product. And if I now hover over data, you will see data has a type of full product. So that looks good. And now let's start with the UI. And to do that, let's delete this return statement and let me create a new one. So let's do a return. Let's return a div. Let's give it a class name. The class name will be bg of white. Inside of this div, let me create another div. Let's give it a class name, and we'll give it an mx of auto max width, which will be screen XL. Then we'll also give it a padding x of 4, a medium of padding x 8. Now inside of this div, let me create another div, and let's give it a class name. So we'll give it a class name of grid. Let's give it a gap of 8. And let's give it an MD of grid calls 2. Now inside of this div, I want to render a image gallery. And to do that, we will actually create a new component. So right here, open your Explorer and then click on app folder, then right here in components, and let's create a new file and let's name it image gallery. Let me spell that correctly, gallery.tsx. Now right here inside of this image gallery, let's start off with export default function, and let's name it image gallery, and let me open that function right now. Now inside of here, what I want to do is actually get the images from our page.tsx. And for that, let's create a interface. So let's name it interface iapp props, just like that. And inside of here, we'll get images, which will be of type any. Right here now, we can destructure and give it in type of iapp props. And you will see if I now right here click on Control Spacebar, we'll get the type images. So now if I go back to the page.tsx, what I can do right now is import our image gallery and close it. Now one thing you will see is we get an error and it tells us property images is missing. So let's actually pass the images. To do that, again, I will click on Control Spacebar and right here images, and then we'll have to add our images, and to do that, let's just do data.images. Now that looks good. We still get an error, and what's the error? Image gallery cannot be used in JSX component. I think that's because we don't return anything. So inside of here, let me for now let's do a return and let's say h1 hey. So now we don't get any error here and no error here. So that looks good. So I think we can continue actually and now create this image gallery. So let me again delete this return statement and let's create a new return statement. Let's create a div element. Let's give it a class name. Let's give it a grid, a gap, which will be 4. And let's give it also an LG, which will be grid of calls 5. Inside of this div, let me create another div and let's give it a class name. Let's give it an order, which will be last. Let's give it an flex, a gap of 4. And let's do also an LG of order none. And let's do an LG of flex call. Inside of this div, what I want to do now is actually map over our images. And to do that, let's get right here our images. Then let's do a dot map. Inside of here, I will get an image and an IDX. And let me just return that. Now right here, TypeScript will complain and it will tell me that it does not know what type image is. That's fine. Let's just give it a type of any. And let's give for IDX also a type of just any. Now inside of here, let me just return a div. Let me give it a key and the key will be IDX. And let me also give it a class name. And the class name will be overflow of hidden. And let's also do a rounded of LG and BG, which will be gray 100. Now inside of this div element, I want to use the image component actually. So let's import the image component from next/image. Just like that. This is a self-closing tag. And inside of here, I will now have to pass the image. So let's give it a source. And the source will have the ul4 function, which I import from our lib folder, or in that sense from our sanity file. Then inside of this function, I will have to pass our image and then also do a .url. Now, what else do we have to add to this image component? We'll have to give it a width. So let's do that right now. The width will be 200. Let's give it also a height. The height will be 200. Let's give it an alt tag. Let's give it an alt tag of photo. And what else do we need? Let's also give it a class name. The class name will be hfull, wfull, object, which will be cover. And what else do we need? Let's do an object, which will be contain, and a cursor, which will be pointer. Also, you see right now we get an error and it tells me object contain applies the same CSS properties as object cover. That's correct. That's because it shouldn't be object contain, but it should be object center. What we can do now is actually check how it looks like. So let's go to Next.js. And yeah, you see 3 images right now, but this still does not look good because we want one big image and these 3 small images. But we already see the small steps to our full page. So since we now render these 3 images, we also want to render a big image. And I will actually do that through state. So right here, above our return statement, let's create a state or a use state. We'll have a big image and let's say set big image. And this will be equal to use state. And right here, let's pass our images, which will be of array 0. So our default state for our big image is just the first image inside of our images array. And with that, what we can do now is actually render this big image. So let's right here go after we map over our image and under this div, let me just create another div element. And let's give it a class name. The class name will be relative. It will have a class name also of overflow hidden. Let's also do a rounded, which will be LG. What else do we need? A BG of gray 100, and let's do an LG of call span 4. And now inside of this div, I can again use the image component, and we'll again have to pass a source. The source will be ul4 big image. So now we don't pass any images, or we don't map over any images. We just use this big image. So that's the first image inside of our images array. Also right here, let's use an .url, and then we can continue. Let's give it an alt. The alt will again just be photo. I know this is not perfect for SEO, but right now I don't really care about that. Also, let's give it a width. The width will just be 500. The height will be again just 500. Then I also want to add a class name, and the class name will be hfull, wfull, object, which will again be cover. Then we'll have an object which will be center, not contain. Now, if we save that, let's check out how it looks like. And we get an error. Is there an error? You're importing a component that needs use state. It only works in a client component, but none of its parents are marked with use client. Well, yeah, that's the error, and Next.js already tells us what the error is. We don't use the use client convention. So since we use right here use state, for that, to make it work, we'll have to use hydration. And hydration only works as if we don't use a server component. That's why we'll have to mark our file right here at the top, or our component in that sense, as use client. And if I now save that and go back and reload everything, you will see that the error should go away. Let's wait for that. And yeah, you see the error is gone, and now everything works perfectly. So now if I save that and go back, you will see right here, we now have this image and these three smaller images. This looks perfect, but I see already one thing I don't like, or actually we can test it out. If I click on one of the smaller images, you see nothing happens. The big image is static, and we don't get these smaller images to convert to a big one. And that's because we now have to modify our state. And that's actually also pretty easy, so let's do that right now. So to do that, let's go right here under our state and let's create a function. So let's say a const handle a small image click. So let's spell that correctly. This will be an arrow function. Inside of here, I want to get through the parameters a image, and the image will be of type any. And now let's me create the arrow function just like that. What I want to do now is actually just set our image, or that's not spelled correctly. Our state should be called set big image. And what I can do now inside of this function is just set our big image. And our big image will be right here past the image. So now what we do actually is we created a function. If we now call the function and pass the image, we set our state, so the set big image, to the current image on which we clicked. So what this means in reality is, let's actually test it right now. If I go right here to the image and add a onClick handler, so let's do an onClick. Inside of here, I can now just create a function. So let's say handle small image click, and let me just pass our image. And now if everything works, if I now click on this image, you'll see the big image changes. The same if I click on this image, or if I again click on this image. So you see now it works perfectly. We can change the big image based on state. So yeah, I think that looks great. One thing we can do now is also add a small banner, which will just have the name sale. So let's do that. To do that right here, let's go under the image component and let's create a span element. Let's give it a class name. This will be just absolute. Then we'll give it a left of 0, top of 0, rounded, which will be bottom right of LG, BG, which will be red 500, PX, which will be 3, PY, which will be 1.5, text, which will be small. What else do we need? Let's do an uppercase, tracking, which will be wider, and let's do also a text of white. Inside of the span, I can now just say sale, and if I now save that and go back, you will see right now on the big image, if I reload that, you actually see nothing. So let me check what the error is. And the error is that I've misspelled BG red. So let's do an BG red of 500. And now if I go back, you see right here on the top left corner sale. And everything still works. As you see, we just have now this small little gimmick where it says sale. So our image gallery is done in that sense. And I think we can continue. So to do that, let's go back to our page.tsx. And now let's go under our image gallery and let's create a new div element. Let's give it a class name, and the class name will be medium of padding y of 8. Inside of this div, I want to create another div, and let's give it a class name. this will be just margin bottom of 2, and medium, which will be margin bottom of 3. And now inside of this div element, I want to have a span element, and the span element will just have my category name. So let's use the data.category name. And if I now save that and go back, we will right here see now men. But let's also style that. So let's give it a class name. The class name will be margin bottom of 0.5. What else do we need? A inline, which will be block. And let's also use a text, which will be gray 500, just like that. If I now save that and go back, it looks better. It's now more grayish, and yeah, I think that's good. Now under the span, let's create a h2 tag. Let's say right here we want to have the data.name, so the name of the product. If I now save that, you see the category name and the product name. Let's style the product name, so let's give the h2 tag a class name. Let's say text will be 2XL, font will be bold, text will be gray 800, and also let's do an LG of text, which will be 3XL. If I now save that and go back, you will now see the title is way bigger and the font is also way more bold. So what else do we need? We have a category name, a name. I think we can now create like a dummy little UI where it just says right here a rating of 4.7 or something like that. Just something like for UI purposes. To do that, we'll go under the h2 tag and under the div tag and create a new div element. Let's give it right here a class name, which will be margin bottom of 6. Let's give it in flex a items, which will be center, a gap, which will be 3, and a medium of, let's say, margin bottom of 10. Now inside of here, I want to use the button, and button is again imported from our components, so from Shadcn and UI, and let's import that. And now inside of this button, I want to use a span element, and right here I will just say 4.2. And also I will want to use an icon. So let's use our icon package. Let's just search for star or something like that. Yeah, that works, I think. Let's import that and just like that. If I now save that and go back, you see, yeah, I guess that could work, but it does not look good at all. So let's style a bit. First of all, let's give our star a class name of height 5 and width 5. Let's style also our span. Let's say a class name, not a use layout effect, but a class name of, let's say, text small. If I now save that and go back, so yeah, let's see, that still does not look good. Let's go back. So the height is not correct. It should be height 5. Let's again save that, go back. Yeah, it's a bit better. I think we should change our button. So let's give it a class name of rounded, which will be full. Let's now check. Yeah, that's now even better. Let's also do a gap of x of, let's say, 2. Now let's say 3. If we now save that, 3 is a bit too big. Let's again do a 2. Yeah, I think I can live with that. I think that's fine. I think we can continue now. So what I could do now is actually under our button element right here, let's create another span, and right here let's just say 56 ratings. If I now save that, you will see that's right here on the right side. Let's also style that so it looks a bit better. Let's say class name of text small. Let's give it in text gray, which will be 500. Let's give it in transition. So right here, just in transition. And let's say a duration of how much? Let's say 100 milliseconds. If I now save that and go back, yeah, that looks pretty nice, I think. So I think we are done with this section. And what do we want to add now? I think we'll have to add the price, and then also a description and a few more things. Also, of course, the most important, the checkout buttons. So let's start off with the price and everything. To do that, we will go under the span and under the div and create a new div element. Let's give it a class name of margin bottom 4. Inside of this div, I want to create another div and also give it a class name of flex, items, which will be end, and a gap, which will be 2. Inside of here, I will now create a span element, and I want to show the price. So let's use a $sign and then a data.price. If I now save that, you'll right now see right here $200. Let me style that since that does not look good in my opinion. So let's give it a class name of text, which will be XL. Then we'll have a font, which will be bold, text, which will be gray 800, and a medium of text, let's say 2XL. If I now save that, you'll see now the price is way more bold, a bit bigger also, so that looks good. Under the span, what I want to do now is again create a new span element. Let's right here again use the dollar and then data.price. And what I want to do now is actually add to our price 30. So now if I save that, actually, you will see we have $200 and $230. Why is that? That's because I want to make an illusion that the price is discounted, even though it's of course not discounted. So for the span, we'll again give it in class name. We'll give it in margin bottom of 0.5. We'll give it in text, which will be red of 500. And let's do also in line through, just like that. If I now save that and go back, you see we get an illusion that the price was $230 and it's now $200, even though it's just hard-coded, as you see. But I think that's fine. What we can do now is actually under the span element and under the div element, we can create another span element. And right here, let's just say inclusive of VAT plus shipping. If I now save that, you will right here see just the text inclusive VAT plus shipping. Let's also give it a class name. The class name will have a text which will be small and text which will be gray 500. If I now save that and go back, yeah, it's a bit smaller and it's a bit more gray. That looks good. So what's the next thing we'll add? Right here, let's add like an icon and let's say shipping 2 to 4 days. So to do that, we'll go under our span and under the div and we'll create another div element. Let's give it a class name of margin bottom, which will be 6, flex, items, which will be center. Let's also give it a gap of 2 and let's say text, which will be gray 500. Then inside of this div, I want to use an SVG again. So let's use the Lucid package. So let's search for a, I don't know, shipping. Is that something like that? Nope, does not look like that. Maybe truck. Yeah, I think truck works. Let's import that and underneath it, let's create another span and let's say 2 to 4 day shipping. Let's see how it looks. I'm not sure actually. Yeah, that's what I wanted actually. So what I want to do is now style our span a bit. So let's give it a class name and the class name will be just text small. If I now go back, yeah, 2 to 4 shipping days, the icon, I think we can make the icon bigger, or is it already width 6 and height 6? Let's check, width 6 and height 6. Yeah, it was already that. So yeah, that's fine. We are done with that. We have now created this little indicator in that sense for the user that the shipping only takes 2 to 4 days. And now we can create the 2 buttons for the user to check out. Now for now, I will use pretty much dummy buttons, but later on we will style them a bit better. So to do that, what we'll have to do is go under the span and under the div and create a new div element. And let's give it a class name, which will be flex, and let's do a gap of 2.5. Then inside of here, what I want to do now is use the button from which we already have imported. And then inside of here, let's just say add to back. And then underneath it, let's just create another button. And then right here, let's say check out now. If I now save that and go back, yeah, that looks nice. Maybe let's change the color a bit. So let's use the other variant. And let's use a variant of, what is it, secondary? Let's see how secondary looks. Yeah, secondary. So now we have 2 buttons. We have a button add to back and we have a button check out now. Both are right now dummy. So if I click on them, nothing happens. But we'll of course change that later. Now, the last thing we'll have to do is add a description, since that's the last thing that's missing. And to do that, we'll go under the button and under the div, and let's create a new P element. Right here, let's render our data.description. And if I save that, you will right here see the text. Now, this looks very generic and not very stylish, so let's change that a bit. Let's give it a class name, and the class name will be margin top of 12. We'll have a text which will be base. Let's also do a text which will be gray 500 and a tracking which will be white. So just like that. If I now save that, you'll see now the text is a bit more gray and also the letter spacing is a bit bigger. So in my opinion, it looks now even better. And now our page is actually finished. So the product page is done. I can click on the individual images. We see the product right here change. We have a category name, the product name, the price, and 2 buttons and a description. So in theory, we are now done with that. What will we do now? Let me think. We could either now create our checkout experience, so the shopping cart and everything like that, or we first of all could create the categories, because if I now click on men, for example, here at the top in the navbar, I will get redirected, but I will get a 404 page not found. So I think let's change that, and let's first of all create the category pages, and then at the end we will actually create the shopping cart and the checkout experience. So now to do that, it's actually again quite easy. We'll have to go inside of our app folder right here, and then inside of the app folder, let's create a new folder. And again, we'll have to use these array brackets. That's because the route will be dynamic. Let's give it a name of category, and then let's save that. Inside of this folder, I will now create a page.tsx, and we'll have to start how we always do with a normal export default function. Let's call it category page, just like that. And let me open the function. Now, what's the first thing we will do? I think the first thing we will do is actually query our data. So let's do an async function, which will be called getData, and let me open that function. Now, inside of here, we'll have to write our query, and I think let's again go back to Sanity and use the Vision tab. So right here, we are in the Vision tab. Let me again delete everything, and also let me put this right here down. We don't need that. And now let's write a new query. So how do we start always? We use an asterisk symbol. We use the array since we want only to get the type, which is equal to product. Now, if I click on fetch, we will get in total 4 items, but these are all with different categories. So for example, one product is for women, the other is for men, and the other is for teens. But I only want to get products from one certain category. And again, we will use the multiple AND. So again, this double AND, we will do a category dot name, and not dot name, but sorry, arrow name. And then this should be equal to, let's say men. If I now click on fetch, you will see we only get 2 items back. And that's because we only have 2 items with the category men, or which is referenced to the category men. Now, what we can do right here is actually, again, do a bit of filtering. So let's open the brackets. And then inside of here, let's get a underscore ID. Let's get the image URL. So let's give it a name of image URL. And this will be of type images. And I want to get the first item inside of the array dot asset. And let's use the arrow to get the URL. What else do we need? Let's get the price. Let's get the name. Let's also get the description, or actually I don't even need the description, but let's get the slug. So let's give it a name of slug, and this will be equal to slug.current. And let's also get the category name. So we give it a name of category name, and this will just be equal to category with an arrow to name. If I now click fetch, we get the category name, the slug, the name, the price, the image URL, and the ID. So everything works actually. So what I can do now is copy this right here, this query, and we can go back to our code. And right here, let's do a const query. This will be again equal to upticks, not normal strings. Be sure of that. And let's paste the query inside of here. Now right here again, I have a static men. I don't want that. I want to have a dynamic category. So again, through our parameter right here, I want to get the category. So the category will be of type string. So let's give it a type, which will be string. And now right here, let me delete the men and use the dynamic value of category, just like that. And we'll use that with this $sign and then the brackets. So that looks good. What I can do now is fetch our product. So let's do a const data. This will be equal to await client, and client is imported from our sanity file dot fetch, and let's fetch our query. And what we'll have to do now is return our data, just like that. Now inside of our export default function, I can now get our data. So we'll do a const data, and this will be equal to await get data. We now get 2 errors again. The first one is it tells me that our export default function is missing the async modifier. So let me add it right here. So export default async function. and we get an error with get data, and it tells me I'm missing one argument. So let's actually get the argument through the params. So let's the structure right here, params, and then the type of params will just be category, and category is of type string. So right now inside of this get data, I can now pass params dot category, just like that. Now if I hover over data, you see data is of type any, and I don't want that. So what I can do now is give it a type, and the type is simplified product, which has an array symbol. Since I don't get just one product, but I can get multiple products, and that's why I have to append this array right here. So now let's actually start with the UI. Or actually, before I do that, I don't even have to write everything manually. If I go to newest right here, newest.tsx, I can just copy everything right now. So let me do that. I have just copied it. Let's go back and let me do a return statement. And let me paste it inside of here. So what I can do right here is, first of all, I don't need this link. So let me just delete it from here. And then let's import the image component from next/image. It does not import for me. So I will just go to the top right here and do an import image from next/image. Then that looks good. We don't get this error anymore. And the last thing we'll do is import our link. So the import is from next/link. And if I now save that, I think everything should work actually. So if I go back to our localhost 3000 and right here, let's go to the index page. And now let's click on man. I should get redirected to /man. And it tells me right here, our newest products. That's not what I want. So let's change it to, what do we want to say right here? Our, let me uppercase that, our products for, and let's use right here, the params.category. What else do I want to change? Right here we have an padding y of 16. Let me delete that. And right here an SM of padding y 24. I think that's all. If I now save that and go back, yeah, that looks perfect. We now get the products, and we have our products for men, and this is dynamic. So if I now click on woman, what you will see is our products for women, or if I click on teens, our products for teens. So yeah, that looks great. Our nav bar, and in that sense our category page, is now fully working. And you also see, if I click on each category, the background color, or the text color in that sense, changes to the current link. So since we are on /woman, our link is also active with woman right here. If I click on teens, it's right here, teens active, or if I click on home, it's active at home. So yeah, that looks perfect. I can also check if I click on woman and click on the product, do we get redirected? Let me click right here. Yeah, that works also perfectly. I can click on each image. So yeah, that looks good. Since we now have created the category page, what else do we need actually? I think nothing. I think we can now create our modal, or our shopping cart modal in that sense, and create our checkout experience. So let's do that right now. So to do that, first of all, I want to initialize our use shopping cart. So if you can remember, we installed a package called use shopping cart, and this makes just the life much easier to handle this whole state, and also to persist the state in local storage and everything like that. So to do that, we'll go inside of our app folder, inside of the components folder, and create a new file, and let's just name it providers.tsx. And now inside of here, I want to export default a function. Let's name it cart provider, and let me just open that function right now. So inside of here, what I want to do now is actually return the cart provider, which I will import from the package. So on top, what I will do right now is import cart provider, and cart provider, as you see, is imported from use shopping cart. I now get an error, and it tells me import declaration conflicts with local declaration. So in basic terms, our name of our function currently conflicts with the name of the import. So as an easy fix, I will just import that as an USC provider. And now I can use it inside of our return statement and use the name, which is called USC provider. Now you see we get a few TypeScript errors, and it tells us type children is not assignable to this types right here. So yeah, we have to pass our children. So right here through the parameters, let me destructure children. And then inside of here, children, well, is of type React Node. So right here now, let me just pass the children. And now this error will go away, I think. Nope, it does not go away. And that's because it's missing the following properties from checkout session. It's missing the card mode, the stripe, the currency, and should persist. So let's change that. So right here, what we have to do is actually add everything. So as in mode, we have a few functions or a few, I guess, modes you can use. So you can either use a payment mode or a subscription mode. And since we are an e-commerce shop, we of course want to have the payment mode. Then we will have a card mode. And for the card mode, we will use client only. Then the next property we'll get is the stripe right here. And stripe is just right here, we have to pass our stripe public key. And for that, I will actually use environment variables. So let's do in process.env.next_public. And this will just have the name of stripe_key. Now, right here, you will see we still get a complaint and it tells me type string or undefined is not assignable to type string. So let me do an as string. So what else do we have to add for properties? We have to add a success URL. So let's for now do some gibberish, who cares? Let's do a cancel URL. So let me delete that, a cancel URL. Let me also add some gibberish. Then for the currency, so currency, let's use USD. Now what the next property I want to use is the billing address collection. So right here, this is just in Boolean and it asks me, do I want to collect the billing address of the user or not? And let me just collect it, but you can set it to false if you want to. Now the next property is should persist, and this is interesting since if I don't set it to true, our shopping cart will not be persisted in local storage. What that means is if the user reloads the page, all the items inside of the shopping cart get lost. And if I set it to true, everything will be stored inside of local storage. That means if the user reloads the page, all of the items will stay consistent in the shopping cart. So the last property I want to use is language, and for that it's just en-us capitalized. And now we are done. Our use shopping cart provider is done. As you see, everything has been added. Let's actually now change the success URL and the cancel URL to something real. And to do that, let's just do an HTTP //localhost 3000 / let's say success. And let me copy that. And let's do the same for error. So just like that. Of course, we still have to create this sites, but we'll do that later. Now I have to actually hook it up to our whole application. And to do that, we will actually go right here inside of the app folder and go inside of the layout.tsx. And now we have to wrap our whole application with this card provider so that every element inside of our application can get the state from the card provider. So inside of our body, I want to wrap the navbar and the children inside of this card provider, which I import from our components. And now I can just pass it everything inside of here. Now, one thing I forgot already that I see right now, if I think about it. So our shopping cart provider is something that uses state. And if you use state, what do you always have to do? Well, you have to mark your component as use client since the component has to hydrate on the client. So to do that, what we have to do, sorry, let me change that. What we have to do is go right here on the top and just add a use client directive. So let's do use client. And now we won't get any errors anymore and everything should work now perfectly. So since I now think that state works, I think we can now create a shopping cart modal. For that, I will go inside of the app folder, inside of the components folder, and let me create a new file called shopping cart, let's say modal, let me spell that correctly, .tsx. So this will now house our modal, and for that I will actually have to install something from shadcn UI. So let me go to UI, right here, UI.shadcn. And what I want to do is search for sheet, since I want to use this sheet right here. So on the right side, you see we get a sheet, and that's how I want to make our shopping cart work. So right here, let's go to CLI and let's copy the installation command. Let me open my terminal and then right here inside let me stop my dev server. Let's clear everything and let me paste the command right here. This will now install, as I said, the sheet. So this takes a second or two. And once that's done, I can again restart my dev server with npm run dev and continue with my shopping cart modal. So let's start off with creating our UI. So let's do an export default function. And let's say, how do we want to name it? Let's say shopping cart modal. And let me just open that function right now. Inside of here, I want to now return something. And what I want to do is to make my life a bit easier. Let me just go right here to the example back. Let me click on code and let me just copy everything inside of this return statement. Let me copy that, paste that inside of here. Let me also use all of the imports that I used right here. So this import, let me just paste it on top of our export default. Let me from here delete the sheet trigger since I won't need it. And inside of this div, or actually let me delete this whole div. And let me also delete the sheet footer since I also won't need that. Inside of here, I can now just use a div with an h1 of hello. Let me also delete this sheet description since I also won't need that. And now we only have a sheet content, sheet header, sheet title, a div, and that's all. So to also see how it looks like, we can add a default open and that should work, I think. From the imports, I can delete the sheet trigger, the sheet footer, sheet description, and sheet close. So now we have a very, very sleek shopping cart modal. And I would say let's actually test it out and see how it looks like. And to see how it works, what we can do is actually go right now to the layout. So layout.tsx. And what I can do now is above or under the navbar actually just import our shopping cart modal. So right here, imported from our components. This is self-closing. So if I now go back and reload our page, you will right here see on the right side how our sheet looks like. We have a title and right now this hello. So let's actually style our sheet. So let's go to our shopping cart modal. Let me close my Explorer since I don't need it. And let's start off with right here configuring the width of our sheet content. Let me give it a class name and let's give it an SM of max width, which will be LG, and width with a custom value with these array brackets of 90 viewport width, so VW. Now for the sheet header, let me change the name or the sheet title in that sense. Let's say shopping cart. If I now go back, you'll now see shopping cart and the sheet is also a bit wider in that sense. So yeah, I think that's fine. And now what we can do is actually create the UI for our shopping cart modal. So let's do that right now. Under the sheet header, let me first of all delete this div element since we won't need that. And let me create a new div element. Let's give it a class name and this will be h of full, flex. Let's give it a flex of call and let's do a justify, which will be between. Inside of this div, I want to create another div. Let's give it a class name of margin top, which will be 8, flex, which will be 1, and let's do an overflow, which will be just of y, let's say auto. Now inside of here, I want to create a UL, so unordered list. Let me also give it a class name, and the class name will just be of minus margin y of 6. Also, I want to give it a divide, which will be y. And let's also do a divide, which will be gray of, let's say, 200. Now, inside of this UL, I want to check if our cart count, so the items inside of our count, is bigger than 0. So if it's bigger than 0, I will show the items, of course. But if it's 0 in that sense, I want to just say, hello, you don't have any items, please add some items. And for that, we can now actually use the hook provided by the use shopping cart package. And to do that, go right here above your return statement, and we can now do in const the structure from or not from equals to use shopping cart. Now right here, if I now click on control spacebar, you can now see all of the properties which I can use. For now, I only want cart count. That's all we need. So now inside of this UL, what I will do is actually check if the cart count is 0. So let's do a cart count is equal to 0. Let's use ternary. So if it's true, let me return something. And if this is false, let me return something else. So if this is true, I will return an h1 and will say, you don't have any items. And if this is false, so we have items, I will say just h1, hey, you have some items. If I now save that and go back, I will now get an error and it tells me attempted to call use shopping cart from the server, but use shopping cart is on the client. So all we have to do is again use an use client directive at the top. So let's do an use client. So now if I go back and reload everything, we don't see anything, and that's because it's, I think, just a bit too small. So let's add a class name of text 3 or 4XL and padding Y of 6. And if I now save that, you see you don't have any items, and that's correct. But before I actually want to style the page for if I have items, I think I have to add the functionality to add items to my shopping bag. And before I do that also, let me first of all style this you don't have any items. So let's give it a class name and we'll have a padding Y of 6. That's all I need. And if I go back, you don't have any items. That looks okay. But now before I can create the functionality to see the items, let's first of all make the buttons work. So actually even before I make the buttons work, if I now click on cart right now, you see nothing opens. And that's because I added right here on the top this default open. But that's not what I want actually. So let me first of all change that and save that. And if I now reload the page, you see the sheet does not open anymore. Now what I want to do now is using our use shopping cart hook, I want to get again a few properties. I also want to get, for example, should display cart. This is just a boolean which tells me if our state to display the cart is true or false. Also, let me add the handle cart click. This is just a function to set our should display cart boolean to true or false. And now for our sheet, I can say open should be only true if our should display cart is also true. And then also let's do an on open change. And right here, let's just say handle cart click. So we'll call the function to change the state or the boolean of should display cart, just like that. But still, if I click on cart or this button right here, nothing works. And that's because I have to hook it up first of all. And to do that, let's go right now to our navbar.tsx. And what we'll have to do now is find the button. And that's right here, button with our shopping cart bag. And what we have to add is an on-click handler. So let's do it right here, an on-click. And now, first of all, we have to import our hook. So let's do an const. And this will be just, let's destructure it and let's leave it empty. And this will be equal to use shopping cart. And now from here, what I want to get is actually the handle click cart. And again, this is just a function to change the boolean to true or in the other sense to false. So right here, let's just now call this function of handle cart click, not handle close cart. Have I imported the wrong one? Yes. This should be handle click cart click, just like that. And right here, I can now call handle cart click. And if I now save that and go back and reload everything, this will take a second. Let's see. If I now click on cart, you see our shopping cart opens. I can click on the X right here, open it again. And yes, this works perfectly actually. So now this works. That's good. What else do we want to do? Now let's make actually the buttons work. So let's again go to our product page for that. So right here, our page.tsx. And as you see, we have two buttons. And I want to break up these buttons now into two separate components. And that's because these two buttons will have to have the use client state, since I want to use this use shopping cart hook. So to do that, let's go right here inside of our app folder. Let's go inside of the components folder and let's create one component called add to bag.tsx. And let's create another file and let's name it checkout now.tsx. Let's first of all use the add to bag. Let's do an export default function. Let's name it add to bag and let me open that function right here. Now inside of here, I want to first of all create a return statement, and I want to return a button, and I import the button from my components, so from Shadcn UI. Now inside of here, I will just say add to cart, and on top, let me now import our hook, so this use shopping cart hook. So let's do in const, let's use an empty destructure, and let's use an use shopping cart. Use shopping cart is imported from our package, which is called use shopping cart. Now inside of here, what do I want to get? I want to get add item, and I want to add handle click or handle cart click. What I want to do now is actually, if the user clicks on the button, I want to add the item of the product to the shopping cart, and simultaneously I want to also open the shopping cart. So let's just first of all check out if everything works. Let's go back to our page.tsx. Let me change this button to the add to back component. And if I now save everything and go back and reload it, you will see we get an error. And that's again because I forgot the use client directive. So on top, let's just do an use client, and let's save that. And if I go back and reload everything, you see first of all the button works again. That's good. But what I have to do now is actually pass all of the product data to this add to back component. And for that, I will create an interface, and let's do for that a export interface product cart, and let me just open that. Inside of here, I want to get a few things. First of all, I want to get a name, which will be of type string. I want to get a description, which will be of type string. What else do I need? I need a price, and the price will be of type number. And let's get a currency, and currency will again be of type string. And let's also get an image, and image will be of type any, just like that. So now right here inside of our add to back, let me just use our interface now, which is called product cart. And right here, let me use that. So I want to get the currency, the description, I want to get the image, I want to get the name and the price. If I now save that and go back to my page, you see we get an error, and that's because I have to add everything. So let's add in currency. Currency will just be USD. I have to add in description, and for the description, this will be of type data.description. What else do we need? We need an image. So let me just use a data.images, and let's use the first one inside of the array. What else do I need? I need the name, and the name will just be of data.name. And what else? I need the price, and the price will be data.price. Let's also give it a key, and it will be just data._id. So this should actually work. So if I now go back to add to back, so to our component, I still have to do one more thing, and that's right here. Under our hook, use shopping cart, let's create a constant. Let's name it product, and this will be just an equal to an object. Inside of here, we'll have a name, and the name will be equal to the name. Then we'll get a description, and the description will be equal to the description. Then we'll get a price, and the price will be equal to the price. The currency will be equal to the currency. And I want to get an image, and the image will be equal to URL4. Let's pass the image, and let's get the .url. So now what we have to do in the button is add a onClick handler, and this will be a function, a arrow function. And now inside of here, I can call my add item. Let me pass my product right here, and simultaneously, let me also call handle cart click. And now I also get an error, and right here we are missing a required property called SKU. And just to fix that for now, let's just give it an ID, and let's do something, just gibberish. I will change it later, you'll see why, but for now I will just add this ID right here. So now in theory, if I go back, let me just reload everything to see if everything works. If I now click on add to back, or add to cart in that sense, you see the cart opens and we don't have anything. It's just an empty shopping cart. So let's change that, and now let's actually try to style our shopping cart. So for that, let me right here delete this h1 tag, and let's use just this empty text right here. And then inside of here, I will get the object.values. Inside of here, I will have to pass cart details. So let me get them from the hook right here. So I want to get the cart details. So right here, cart details. And if they are undefined, let's just use an empty object. And now we can map over them and get an entry and just return that. So I know it's a bit complicated, but all we do is pretty much map over our object, get the entry, and now we can style it. So right here, let's create an li tag. Let's give it a key, since React currently complains a bit. The key will just be the entry.id. Then what else do we need? The class name? Yeah, let's give it a class name, which will be flex, padding y, which will be 6. Then we'll have an overflow, which will be hidden. Let's give it a rounded of medium. And let's also give it a border, and border, which will be gray, of 200. Now inside of here, I want to render an li. And first of all, I will have to give it a key to prevent any React errors. So let's give it a key of entry.id. Then inside of here, let me also give it a class name. And this will be just flex and padding y of 6. Now inside of this li, I want to create a div element. And let me style that. So let's give it a class name of h24, width 24. Let's give it a flex, which will be of shrink 0, a overflow of hidden. And let's also do a rounded of medium, and border gray 200. Now this div element is actually just the parent for our image. So if you can remember from the demo, we will have our shopping cart and we will have the image of the product. And this div element is just the parent of this image. So now inside of this div, I can now use the image component from next image. So let me import that. And then inside of here, I have to pass a source, and the source will just be the entry.image. And let's do an as string. Then I will have to add an alt tag. And for the alt, I will just say product. Let me spell that correctly, product image. Then what else do I need? A width, let's do 100. Let's do a height, which will also be 100. And let's also do a height, which will also be 100. And I think that's actually all. If I now save that and go back and open my cart, you will see now the product of which we have just added to our cart. So that looks great. What else do we need? So now under this image and under this div element, what I want to do now is actually just render the name, the price, the description, the quantity, etc. So let's create a new div element right here. Let's give it a class name. It will have a margin left of 4, flex of 1, and flex of call. Then inside of this div, I want to create another empty div. And then inside of this empty div, let's create another div. And let's give it a class name of flex, justify, which will be between. Then I want to have a text, which will be base. Let's also have a font of medium. And let's give it a text, which will be of gray, let's say 900. Then inside of here, I want to use an h3 tag. And let's just give it the name. So right here, entry.name. I think I also want to style that, but before that, let's check how it looks like. So let's click on cart. Yeah, it looks all right. I don't even think we need to style it any further. So now I want to also show the price. So under this h3 tag, let me create a p tag, and let's just say entry.price. If I now save that and go back and again click on that, yeah, we see the price. Still does not look perfect. First of all, let's add the $sign right here so everyone knows that's the price. And let's do a class name of margin left of 4. And if I go back and click on it, yeah, I think that looks great. So what else do we have? We have now the name, we have the price. Let's add the description. So under the p tag and under the div tag, let me add a p tag, and let's render the entry.description. Now you will see one thing. If I click on that on our card, you will see the description is way too long. It's huge. I don't want it to be that long. I want it to be maximum 2 lines and no more. And to change that, we have to add a few class names. And it's very easy actually. First of all, let's give it a margin top of 1. Let's also give it a text, which will just be small, since I don't want the image, the text to be big. And let's add a text gray of 500. And the most important class name, which will be line clamp. With line clamp, I can tell Tailwind, or in that sense CSS, how many lines the text should be. So 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, how many you want. And I think 2 is the perfect amount. And if I save that and go back, you'll now see, yeah, it looks great. The description is now only 2 lines long. It looks way nicer, so that's good in my opinion. So now we have added the description, and what I think we can do now is add a button to remove the item from the shopping bag. So under the p tag and under the div tag, let me create another div element and let me give it a class name. So let's do a class name of flex, which will be 1, items, which will be end. Let's also do a justify of between, and text, which will just be small. Then inside of here, what I want to do is add an p tag, which will show the quantity of the item. So entry.quantity. If I save that and go back and click on the cart, you will see right now just the number 1. This of course does not look good at all. So before the entry.quantity, let's say just QTY with a colon. And if I go back again, now it's much more clear that I mean the quantity. Also, let's give it a class name. I want to change the color of the text. So let's say text gray of 500. So what else? Now I think we can add the button to remove the item. So for that, we will go under the p tag and create another div element. Let's give it a class name of flex. And inside of here, all I want to do is just add a button. And I don't want to add the shed_cn button, but just a normal button. Then I want to give it a type. Let's just say type of button. Let's also give it a class name, which will be font of medium. Let's also do a text of primary. I want it to be this violet color. And let's do a hover of text, which will be primary and 80% opacity. I do that with the slash, and then I can just change or add any number, and this will just give me the opacity value of that. And right here for the value, let's just say remove. If I now save that and go back, you will see that looks very nice. We have this button. If I hover over it, the opacity changes. I have the quantity right here. So that looks great. Now let's make this button also work. So we'll have to add an onClick handler. And before we can do anything, let's right here go to our hook and let's add the remove item property, or the function in that sense. And what I can do now inside of this onClick handler is call it. So let me delete that and do right here. Let's call it. So remove item. And now very important, what we have to do to make it work is add the ID of the product. So right here, it will get a parameter, and this will be entry.id. And I think we can test it out. I mean, why not? Let's go back. Let's click on cart. And if I click on remove, you see the item is deleted and it tells me you don't have any items. I can go back, click on add to cart, and the item is back. Also, we can check if local storage works. So if I reload the page and if I click on cart, you see the item is still there. So that also works perfectly. Great. So now what I want to do is right here on the bottom show like a checkout button. So where the user can click and then check out. And to do that, we will right here go under this UL. So right here we map over everything and everything like that. And now we have this UL tag. Let's just go underneath it. And there we have a div. And underneath this div, I want to create another div element. Right here, let's give it a class name. And this will have a class name of border top. So border T in that sense. Let's do a border of gray 200. Let's do a PX of 4, a PY of 6, and a SM of PX of 6. Now inside of this div, I want to create another div element. So let's create a div. Let me give it a class name of flex, justify between. What else do I need? I want to have a text of base. I want to also have a font of medium, and let's do a text of gray 900. Then inside of here, I want to now show the total or the subtotal in that sense. So I will create 2 p tags. So let's do that. The first p tag will just have the name subtotal with a colon. And then in the second p tag, I want to show the amount. So let's get the total price, and I have to import that, or not import that, but get it from our hook right here, our use shopping cart hook. So let me get the total price. So if I now go back, I can render that, and let me also show the $sign in front of it so everyone understands that that's the price. So if I go back, you will see right here on the bottom, we now have a subtotal of $40 with a nice border on top. This looks perfect in my opinion. So now I want to create under this div element a small p tag, All it should say is just shipping and taxes are calculated at checkout. I think I misspelled something, but that's okay, I don't care. Let's also add a class name of margin top 0.5. Let's do a text which will be small, and let's do a text of gray 500. If I save that, go back, this will now reload again. Let me click on cart. Yeah, shipping and taxes are calculated at checkout. Looks great in my opinion. So now I think we can create a button where with which the user can check out. So to do that, go under the p tag and create a button, or not a button, but a div element. So let me do that. And then right here, let's give it a class name of margin top 6. And then inside of this div element, I want to use the shared cn button, so our button component that's imported also from our components. Let me right here add a class name, which will be just width of full, and let's say just check out. So if I go back, yeah, that looks very nice. Actually, I really like it. The design is perfect in my opinion. And then the last thing I want to do is just add a second smaller button without any background, where it will just say continue shopping, and if the user clicks on it, the shopping cart modal just closes and we can continue shopping. So to do that, go under the div, so under the button and under the div, and let's create another div element. Let's give it a class name, and the class name will be margin top of 6. We'll have a flex, justify, which will be center. We'll have a text of center. Let's also do a text of small, and let's do a text of gray 500. Inside of this div, I can now use an p tag and just say or, then create a button, and then say inside of here, continue shopping. If I now would save that, you will see right here, if I click on the cart, or continue shopping. This now does not work right now, so let's change that. So let's first of all maybe style our button. So let me give it a class name. Let's just say font, which will be medium, text, which will be this violet, so with text primary, and let's do a hover, which will be text primary, and let's give it an opacity of 80% with the slash. If I now save that and go back and click on the cart, yeah, this looks very nice. But if I click on the button right now, nothing happens. And that's because we have to add an on-click handler. So let's do an on-click, and this will have a function, and I want to call the handle cart click function. If I now save that right now and go back, open the cart, and now click on this, you will see the cart is being closed. So this works perfectly. There's just one thing. If I click on checkout, nothing works. I know, quite sad, right? All of this time, I don't know, these 3 hours, these 2 hours, and still checkout does not work. But now we'll come to the most important step, and that's Stripe. So let's head over to the Stripe website. So now I'm at the Stripe website. Let me zoom in a bit. And I think you all know what Stripe is. Stripe is a payment processor. I think it's one of the best out there. It has great APIs, and that's why we'll use Stripe. So if you don't have an account, create one. I already have an account, so I will click on sign in. So as you see now, I've come to the index page of my right here project name, I guess, or my company name, however you want to name it. And right now I'm in test mode, as you see. The first thing I want to do is click on developers, and right here I want to copy my publishable key. So let me copy it. Let's go back to our code. And what I want to do is inside of our root, so let me close everything, I want to create a .env. And inside of here, I want to create or pretty much store our publishable key. So if you can remember, if I open the app folder, the components folder, and open our providers file, you see that we pass our Stripe with the help of the process.env. So with our .env file, we share our publishable key, and we name it next_public_Stripe key. So let me copy the name. Let's go to .env, and let me right here pass this publishable key. So I paste that, and now our .environment variable is right here stored. Also, one very important thing, you never want to publish your keys on GitHub. And to prevent that, go to your .gitignore and under right here .env local add just .env. With that, we will never publish our env file to GitHub. And now that's all actually. We can now continue. So let's go back to Stripe right here. Let's click on home. And now what I want to do is actually create a few products inside of Stripe. And to do that, click right here on more. Then I want to click on product catalog. Let me zoom in a bit. And I want to create a few products. So let me click right here on add product. And what I want to do now inside of here is add my 4 products which I have created. Why do I do that? That's because I later on will get a price ID from here, and then I can use that to make checkout work with our front end. So what you have to do right now is actually just open our Sanity. So let me do that right now. And now once Sanity is open, you see your 4 products. And what I want you to do now is actually copy all names. So let's copy this name right here for the shoes. Then I won't do any description. The pricing, what was it for the shoes? 200. So let's do a price of 200. For me, it's euros, but let's change it to dollars. So everything is the same to our front end in our project. This will be a one-time payment. We don't want any subscriptions, and that's fine. Let me also upload the image real quick. And now when that's done, I think that's good. I can now click on save product. This will now save the product, and I will get a price ID right now. And what do I want to do with this price ID? What I want to do is store this price ID inside of my Sanity project and then later on call it from the front end. To do that, what you will have to do is, first of all, let's go back to our project. Let's go inside of our, let me close everything. Let's go right here inside of our, where is it, Sanity folder, inside of our schemas folder, and then go inside of your product file. And let's create a new field. I want to give it a name. The name will just be called price_ID. I want to give it a title. The title will be Stripe product, not product, but price ID. And I want to give it a type, and the type will just be string. And then inside of here, I will store these product IDs or these price IDs. If I now save that and go back to Sanity, this will reload for a second. And now you see I can add my Stripe price ID. Let me do that. So I will now copy this to the clipboard and just paste it inside of here. I can now click on publish and you see that works. So now let me do the exact same steps for the next 3 products. And once I'm done, I will come back. So as you see right now, if I click on product catalog, I have created in total 4 products with pricing and images and the name of the product. If I now go back to Sanity, you also see that for each product I have now added the price ID. So right here you see that for each product, and I also have successfully published everything. So now we can actually use that inside of our front end and make Stripe checkout work. So let's do that right now. So first of all, let's go to our interface.ts. For our full product, I will have to add that. So price_ID will be of type string. Then we'll have to go to our page.tsx, and to be more specific, we'll have to go to the page.tsx for our product, so product/slug. Now inside of here, what I want to do is actually get our price ID. So under the category name, let's get our price_ID. And now since I get that through our front end, I guess, or through Sanity, what I can do now is go to our add to bag component, so to our button. Now, instead of an ID, I don't want to get an ID anymore. So instead of our interface right here, I want to get actually a price_ID. This will be of type string. Let me also get it right here through the structuring. And then instead of an ID, I will pass a price_ID. And this will be equal to price_ID. And if I now go back to the page.tsx, I will get an error. And it will tell me that I'm missing one property, which is the price_ID. So let me add that, and this will be data.price_ID. So now this should already work actually, but before I make it work, I want to make the checkout now button work. So let me open the component for that, which is called checkout now. Let me copy everything from add to bag. So let me copy that, paste that inside of here. Let's change the name from add to bag to checkout now. I don't have to use this interface since I can just import that. Since I right here, I export the interface. So let's just double click and import the interface from add to bag. And I think that's all already. But now the button in theory has the same functionality as the add to back button, but that's not what I want to do. With the with the checkout now button, I want the user to be redirected directly to Stripe and not open the shopping cart modal. So what we'll have to do right now is actually change a bit. So instead, right here in importing handle cart click and add item, I only have to import checkout single item, since I only want to check out one single item. And what I want to do now is actually create a function which will be called buy now, where I can just pass the price ID and then call checkout single item. So to do that, let's create a function. Let's call it just buy now. I want to get the price ID right here, and the price ID will be of type string. And let me open the function, and inside of here I can just call our checkout single item and pass the price ID. Then right here in the onClick handler, I can delete this add item and handle cart click and just call buy now and then pass our product.price ID. And now in theory it should actually even work. But before I test it out, let me first reload everything. Does it work? Also, let me open the cart. Is it empty? No, we have something in here. So what do you guys think? Let's first of all remove the item from here. Let me again reload everything. Let me again open the cart. It's empty. So let's test it out. Which button do we test? The checkout now button or the add to cart button? I think let's check out the add to cart button. We have one item added. Let's add a few more things. So I will click right now on men. Let's also add this Nike Windrunner. So let me click it, add to cart. Let's click again on men. Let me, not this one, sorry. Let me also add the shoes. So let's click on add to cart. Let's also click on teens and let's also add these shoes right here. And now you see we have in total 4 items with each a quantity of 1. We have a total price of $525. And I guess let's click on checkout, and nothing worked. That's because I haven't created the redirect. So let's do that. Let's open the shopping cart modal, and what we have to do inside of here is actually very, very simple. It's not even that hard. So what you'll have to do right now is go right here under our hook, this use shopping cart hook, and let's create a new async function. Let's just name it handle cart, I guess, or handle, let's call it handle checkout click. Then inside of here, we'll get an event. This will be of type any, and let's open our function. Let's do an event.prevent default, since I want to prevent the default. And then inside of here, what I want to do is let's do a try state. So let's do a try. And now inside of this try statement, what I want to do is actually just try to redirect the user to checkout. And for that, we have to go right here to the hook and get our function, which is called redirect to checkout. And now inside of this try hook, inside of this try statement, I can now do a const result, and this will be just equal to await redirect to checkout. And if everything works good, it should work. If not, then it's not that good. But let's just do some very simple error handling. So if we get an error result, and this will have an error, for example, we are not sure. So let's add a question mark dot error. Let's just do a console.log and let's say result. That's good. And also right here we get a complaint, and that's because we have to add a catch. So let's do right here a catch, and we will get an error. And let me open that, and let's just say console.log error. I know this is not perfect error handling. In theory, you of course should handle it way better, not just log it to the console. But I'm just lazy right now. I don't want to do that hard work. We'll just leave it as it is. If you want to do the hard work, please be my guest, do it, but I won't do that. But now the last thing we have to do is actually just hook up this handle checkout click button or function to our button. So let's do that. Let's scroll down. We have right here our button with checkout, and let's add a onClick handler and let's pass the function name. And in theory, it should now work. So let me click on cart. We see all of our items with the subtotal, and now let me click on checkout and we get an error. So what's the error? Event.prevent default is not a function. So what have I misspelled? I think I've just misspelled prevent default, and yes, I've misspelled that. So let's do it prevent default. So now this should be correct. If I now go back and click the cart and click on checkout, what do we see? We see nothing. And I actually know what the error is, but I will still open the console for you guys and you will see what the error is. And the error is the checkout client only integration is not enabled. Enable it in the dashboard. So let's follow the link right here. Or let me just copy and paste that. So let's click on copy. Where is it? Open a new tab. So now this will open in a new tab. And if you scroll down on the bottom right, you will see enable client only integration. Let me click on that and let's click on allow. That's all fine. This will now work. And if I now go back, reload everything, let's close everything. Let me open my cart. Let's click on checkout. And I'm now 99.999% sure it will work. So let's click on it. And oh, yes, we got redirected. So now you see everything works. We have the price, we have all of the data. So that looks good. So before I actually do anything, let's actually click back right now. And what do we see? We get an error page, our products for error, and that's because we got routed back to this dynamic value which we have for our category page. Let's first of all style or create an actual error page and success page, and then we'll test out the actual direct checkout or checkout in general. So right here, let's change it from localhost 3000 success to slash, I guess, stripe slash success. And the same right here, slash stripe slash error. So now let's go inside of our app folder, and inside of here, let's create a new folder. Let's call it stripe. And then inside of the stripe folder, let's create another folder. First of all, a error folder, and then another folder inside of the stripe folder, which will be called success. And now let's first of all style the error page. So let's create a page.tsx. Inside of here, let's do an export default function. Let's call it error stripe, and let me open that function. Inside of here, I can now return a div. So let's do a div, and let's just say h1 or not h, or let's say h2, and let's say something went wrong. ... And let me also style the div, and let's give it a class name of py10. So very basic. If I now open that and go to slash stripe slash error, you will see right here the error page, and it will just say something went wrong. I don't want to style that, but I want to create a success page and style that. So let's do that. Inside of the success folder, let's create a new file called page.tsx. And then inside of here, let's do an export default function, and let's name it stripe success. And let's open that function inside of here. Let's create a return statement. Let's create a div. Let's style that. So let's give it a class name of h, which will be screen. Then inside of here, let's create another div, and let's just say class name of margin top 32, medium, which will be max, width of, let's say, custom value. So if the array brackets, let's say 50 viewport width, so VW. And let's do an MX of auto. Inside of here, I want to now use an icon. So let's do a check mark, or how is it called? Check. Yeah, I guess check, whatever that is. And let's close that. Inside of here, let me add a class name of text, which will be green of 600, W of 16, and let's do an H of 16, MX of auto, and MY of 6. Then under this, right here, under this check icon, let me create another div, and let me give it a class name of text, which will be center. Inside of here, I want to create an H3, and let's just say payment done. And let's do an exclamation mark. Let me also style that H3. So let's say a class name of MD, which will be text of 2XL, text which will be base, text which will be gray 900, font which will be semi-bold, and let's also do a text which will be center. So if I now save that, let's go back, let's open slash stripe slash success. And what will we see? What will we see? Yeah, it looks alright, but we are still not done. So let's change that. So under this H3, let me add a P tag. Let's just say, thank you for your purchase. We hope you enjoy it. Now, I know I have some spelling mistakes, but again, I don't care about that. Let's give it in class name. Let's give it in text of gray 600, and let's do in margin Y of 2. And under that, let's add another p tag, and let's just say have a great day, exclamation mark. If I now save that and go back, yeah, that looks fine. I think that's okay. Now the last thing I want to do is add a button. So under the p tag, let's just add a button, and that's imported from the components. And then inside of here, let me add a link that's imported from next/link. I will have to give it an href. So let's give it an href, and the href will just be the slash. So I want to link to the index page. And for the name, let's just say go back, just like that. Also for the button, I have to mark it as child, since the button has a child, which is called link. If I now go back, we will now see the go back button. I want to also add a class name. I already see it right here. So let's do a class name of margin top of 5. And I think that looks good. Yeah. If I now click on that, you will see we get redirected to the index page. So that works. Now, one thing I want to do right now in the providers, I want right here the billing address collection. I want to set it to false since I don't need it actually. But again, you can leave it to true. It will just ask the user, or in that case yourself, to add your address. I don't need that, so I won't set it to true. And now I think we can check out if everything works. So let's again click on checkout. And once that's done, we get redirected to the checkout Stripe page. I can now add an email. So let's do test@test.com. Let's do the test card number of 42424242. Then for the date 4242, and for the CVC the same. For the name test John. Country, yeah, that's fine. And now I will click on pay right here. This will take a second or maybe multiple seconds. You see it was successful. I got redirected to Stripe/success. So that works. That's great. So as you see, everything works. I can click on each category as you see. I can click on our logo. I can click right here on woman. I can again click on our logo. I can click on each product as you see. Then I can click on each image as you see. I can again click on the logo to go back. And now the last thing we haven't done is created the see all. If I now click on that, you will see we don't get any products. But I think we have learned today so much that you can do it on your own without my help anymore. So definitely try it yourself. But for now, I think our project is today done. And I think we can now deploy it to Vercel. So let's first of all push our code to GitHub. Now, before I push anything to GitHub, what I want to do right now is actually add a vercel.ignore. So right here, .vercel.ignore. And why do I do that? That's because I don't want to deploy my sanity folder to Vercel. If I don't add this Vercel ignore, later on Vercel will just deploy my project, or in that sense sanity, and will throw an error. I don't want that, so to circumstance that, I will just add the sanity name right here. And now let's actually push our code to GitHub. Let me stop my dev server, let's clear everything, and let me go to the GitHub website. So I'm now at github.com/new, and right here I can now create a new repository. Let's create a new repository called commerce YouTube Next.js YouTube. I will make it public, and that's all. I can now click on create repository, and that looks good. I can now right here in my terminal do an git init. This will initialize a new repository. For myself, it will now just reinitialize a existing git repository, but for you it should be an empty one. Then let's do a git add everything with a dot. So git add dot. Let me also zoom in a bit. Then what I want to do is a git commit, and this will be in -m with a message, and let's just say finished project. And then let me click enter. This has now committed everything, and now we can go to the next step, and that's right here in the website. Follow the instruction and create a new branch. So let me copy that. Let me paste that inside of here. Then I have to add a remote origin. I will copy that and paste that. And then right here I will have to push the code. So let me copy that and paste that. So now we should push our code to GitHub. And if I go back and reload everything, we should see our code right here. And if I zoom out a bit, yeah, that looks very good in my opinion. So now let's go to Vercel and deploy our project. So I'm now at vercel.com/new, and right here I will now click right here for the commerce Next.js YouTube. I will just click on import. This will now import our project. We already see the framework preset, which is Next.js. The only thing I have to add is an environment variable. So let me open the .env file and copy this next public Stripe key. I can copy it, paste it inside of here, and then click on deploy. This will now take a bit, so once that's done, I will come back. So now you see our project has been successfully deployed. Everything again works. We can click on each product right here. It loads. I can click on the images if I want to, and that looks good. Now still, it isn't perfect. For example, if I click on checkout now, nothing works. And that's because right here we should have added our checkout now component. If I now add it and add all of these properties right here, so let me add them, you will see also that this will work once I deploy it. Now there's one more thing. If I now deploy our Sanity Studio, so let's do that. I will go to this terminal, stop our dev server, and run npm run deploy. So this will now deploy our Sanity Studio. This will take a second. Actually, I also have to add a name. So let's say Next.js commerce, and let's click enter. This will now take a bit. Once that's done, I will come back. So it has been now deployed. I will now copy the URL and let me open it in a new tab. I think I will also have to log in. Let's see if I have to do that. Nope, I don't have to do that. So I can show you what the problem is. Let me create just a new product, very basic. I will just call it test. Let me give it an image. So I have now just created a product with an image of a drink. I know it's a very good idea. But yeah, we have now this product test. In theory, if I now go to my deployed version, let me also, for example, add right here a type of category. First of all, let's do men, and let me click on publish. If I now go back to our localhost, or not to our localhost, but to our deployed version, and if I click on men, in theory, you would think that this product would now show up, right? It's deployed at the end of the day, and we also have right here our product category. I can again click on reload, and you see nothing. And that's because we use server components, and by default they are static. So the first request which hits the server, or in that sense our serverless function, this will be fresh data. But each subsequent request will be cached indefinitely. So at the end of the day, even though this is very fast, it's not very practical, since if I create a new product, you will never be able to see that. And that's not what I want to do, of course. So to actually change that, we have to add a bit of configuration. So let's go back to our code. We have now changed, first of all, our button. So that's good. The next step is now to make our page dynamic. So let's first of all open our page.tsx, which is inside of the category folder. And inside of here, what I want to do now is add something very simple. So to see that, go to the next.js docs, and then you can click on caching and search for this right here, export const dynamic, force dynamic. With that, I opt out of all caching for all data requests in the route segment. So each request which will hit the server at the end of the day, which will always be dynamic and not cached. So if I copy that now, I will copy this right here and add it inside of this page.tsx in the category and add it right here. Now I will also have to add it at 2 more places. First of all, let me again copy that. Let's go to the index page, which is also called page.tsx. Let's add it also right here on top. And then let's also go to the page.tsx, which is inside of the slug folder. So for each individual product. Also right here above the export default function, let me add that. So now we have this problem with caching fixed. If I now deploy it and create a new product, you will see that. There's actually one more thing which we have to add. So if I go to the providers.tsx, you see right here that our success URL is currently localhost 3000. But if you go to our production environment, you see that the URL is commerce/next-youtube.vercel.app. So it has changed. So let's copy this URL now. For you, it will be a different URL, but let me copy this and let's change localhost to this new URL, which I've just copied. Let's also do it right here. And now this should work. So now we have an HTTPS with my URL /stripe/success and the same for the cancel URL /stripe/error. And now we can deploy everything. So let's do it right here in git add everything with a dot. Then I want to do in git commit -m. For the message, we should say just everything should now work. Let me click on enter and let's do in git push. This will now push everything to GitHub, and if I now go to Vercel, you will see right here that our project is automatically rebuilding again everything. You can also click right here on building and see how everything works if you want to, but I think that's all. Everything should work. We shouldn't get any errors. So let's wait for it to finish the build, and once that's done, I will come back. So everything has been successfully deployed. I can now again open my right here project under the same URL. If I now click on man, you will see I will now get my test, my Mojito. I know it's it's a good product to sell in an e-commerce shop, but whatever. You see, of course, it now works. So this whole static thing is now out of the way and everything works. We can now also check if the button for the well, that's weird. I think I've done an error. This is the same button. This shouldn't be. So let's again change that. This shouldn't be add to cart. This should be check out now. And I should have a variant. And this should be of type outline. So now everything again. Let's do in git add everything with a dot. Let's do in git commit m with changed button. Let's click enter. And let's do in git push. This will now again push everything to Vercel. Again, Vercel will rebuild everything. If I reload this right here, you will see in a second building. Let's again wait for a second. I'm sorry guys, but now everything should work in a second. So now finally everything has been deployed. Again, let's open our page right here. I can now click on the product again, and now checkout now looks better. Let's check out if checkout now actually also works. So let's click on that. We will get redirected to Stripe, which is great. We see the product, we see the image. Let me again add an email, test@test.com. Let's add card data 424242. Then again the same for here and for here. For the name, test John. And let me click on pay. This will now again take a few seconds. Let's see. We will get redirected. And as you see, it looks great. That's good. Let's go back. One more thing we can check out. If I go right here again, click on add to cart, you will see the items right here. And if I reload the page, we should still see them in a cart because of local storage. And yes, we see that. Also, if I add one more item to the cart, you will see that the quantity changes to 2. So that's great. Everything works. And I hope you enjoyed this video. We have learned a lot in this video. Again, the thing you have to do right now is just create the see all button or the see all page, and then you will be done with today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I will see you in the next video. So now enjoy your day and bye.